right. Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, August the 29th, 2017 convening of the Baltimore City Board of Municipal and Zoning Appeals. We're going to get underway. However, before we do that, just a few house rules. First, if you have a pager, a cell phone, anything that plays any kind of electronically generated audible sound, plays a ringtone, a chime, etc. We ask at a minimum that you please turn those devices to a vibrate only, if not off position. Similarly, to the extent that you need to have a conversation with someone, we ask that you please take those conversations out the double doors to your rear. And the reasons for those rules are pretty simple and straightforward. These proceedings are being recorded, and cell phones, pagers, conversations, and the like are generally disruptive to the conduct of these proceedings, but also disrupt the recording of these proceedings. In addition, those of you who are forward of the wall above you, you can see that there are 1, 2, 3 video cameras which are mounted on the wall behind you there, and there are 1, 2 video cameras which are mounted on the walls up here behind us here. These proceedings are being videoed for broadcast, both streaming on the website for the city's cable access network, as well as videoed for broadcast on said cable access network, as well as stored for all posterity in the city's YouTube channel. So cell phones, pagers, conversations, and the like are generally disruptive to that process as well. You're more than welcome to stick around and enjoy a civics lesson if you so choose. We will be voting at the end of the day. However, if you have other things to do with your day, that's certainly understandable, and you can call into the zoning board office in the morning and find out how we ruled in your case. If you take out pen and paper, I can read the number for the zoning board off a couple of times. That number is 410-396-4301. That number again is 410-396-4301. You will, however, need to wait until you receive the formal written notice of the outcome of your case, which should be forthcoming in about 3 to 4 weeks, before you'll be able to get your permit. We certainly ask that you please not build in the city of Baltimore without first obtaining all of your proper permits. If you haven't already done so, if you're here in opposition to any case today, we ask that you please sign in on the sign-in sheet to my right. They're being held up there by Mr. French. The sign-in sheet allows us to know generally which cases have opposition, as well as allows us to know who needs to receive those aforementioned written notices I just referred to. So if you're here in opposition to any case today, please make sure that you signed in on our sign-in sheet. In addition, we do have some cases which are being postponed, and so those cases aren't going to go forward today. We may have others as well. So if any case that you're here on does get postponed, we will need to know who you are and how to contact you to let you know when those cases do go forward. The procedure for today is the same as it is for all of our hearings. So when your case is called, you'll come forward. The appellant will stand to our left or your right. The opposition, if any, will stand to our right or your left. Once everyone's up here, we'll get you all sworn in. And then we'll begin first with the appellant, who given the opportunity to present whatever issues are involved in the appeal, present any documents or witnesses they would like to present to the board in support of their arguments, and respond to any questions which the board may have. Once they've concluded, we'll then turn to the opposition, if any, who'll be given the opportunity to present their side of things, their documents, witness testimony, and the like, etc. Once the opposition is concluded, I will return back to the appellant, who given the opportunity to respond to any points which have been brought up by their opposition, and then offer a closing statement. We won't be going back and forth, unnecessarily delaying things any longer than is necessary. We will generally be calling the cases in the order in which they appear on our docket. However, we do have some preliminary matters to dispense with. First, as I mentioned, there are some cases which have been postponed and will not be going forward today. 2017-275, 3832 West Forest Park Avenue. That case has been postponed until September the 12th. 2017-277, 2030 West Cold Spring Lane. That case has also been postponed until September the 12th. 2017-298, 5715 Hillen Road, and 2017-300, 536 Wellesley Street. Both of those cases also have been postponed to September the 12th. So if you're here in reference to either of those cases, we ask that you please make sure that you've signed in so we can send you out a new notice on those cases. Next, we're going to call those cases which are on our consent agenda first. The consent agenda consists of cases where the zoning board staff has reviewed the files in these matters, and the board has determined that we have sufficient information to approve these appeals based upon the records submitted. We're going to call all the consent cases together as a group, so the first person will come forward and they'll stand right there, and everyone else will line up behind them. I ask that you please try to stay in the order in which you're called. Once everyone's up here, we'll get you all sworn in as a group, and then we'll call each case in turn, and you'll be given the opportunity at that time to offer any information that you would like to have added to the record. 2017-234, 1508 North Eden Street, Dale Daniel. And 2017-292, right there. 2017-292, 1801 through 1825 East Oliver Street, Susan Williams. After that will be 2017-293, 3307 Shuck Street, Praful Patel. Then we'll have 2017-294, 2028 through 2030 Fountain Street, Ellen Cherry. Then 2017-305, 1061 South Charles Street, Frank Shaulis. (2017-307) 609 Port Street, Steve Carroll. Okay. And then 2017-308, 3250 East Fayette Street, Sean Kennedy. Um, 2017-309, 1255 Battery Avenue, Aris Sathis. 2017-314, 3112 Fleet Street, Steve Carroll. Ms. Junker, that's you as well? No. No? Okay. Okay.
It was a typo. Steve Carroll wasn't really the appellant for Port Street.
Ah, gotcha. 2017-316, 2040 Rock Rose Avenue, Carlton Gilbert. And that's the last one. Okay. If all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hands and be sworn, please.
You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes.
All right, calling the first case, 2017-234, 1508 North Eden Street, Dale Daniel.
Yes, sir.
Afternoon, sir. We have this as an application to construct a two-story rear addition and rooftop deck at this location. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. And Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Martin French for the Baltimore City Planning Department. Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Daniel, did you have anything you would like to have added to the record this time?
No.
Okay. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve the appeal. Good luck.
Thank you.
Next, 2017-292, 1801 through 1825 East Oliver Street, Susan Williams.
Yes.
Afternoon, ma'am.
Afternoon.
We have this as an application to use the entire premises as a mixed-use food hub. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. French, anything with respect to this appeal for the planning department?
Thank you, yes. Planning Department has reviewed this application and recommends approval, based in part upon the approval by the Director of Planning of an exemption from parking requirements for this property, and subject to construction of all improvements in accordance with the approved site plan. Thank you.
Okay. And Ms. Williams, are those conditions stated by the Planning Department acceptable to you?
Yes, and for the record, we have provided you with a copy of the parking waiver for historic structures. It's in your files, it should be in your files.
Okay, yep. All right. Anything further?
No, sir.
All right. Zoning Board staff, having previously reviewed the application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. Take care. Next, 2017-293, 3307 Shuck Street, Praful Patel, or Lisa Junker.
In this case.
All right, Ms. Junker, we have this as an application to construct a second overhanging addition and rooftop deck at this location. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's a second floor rear addition.
All right. Mr. French, anything for the Planning Department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right. And Ms. Junker, anything further you would like to have added to the record?
Mr. Tanner, did you receive this letter from the Canton Community Association?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you need an email that authorizes me to be here on behalf of Mr. Patel?
Sure.
I mean, I have it for both of them. It says, okay, thanks, I'll have you represent me. It's for both of them, in the
Okay.
event that it's needed for the record.
All right. Anything else?
No, thank you.
All right. Zoning Board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
You want me to get your other one?
That would be great. It's,
That would be 2017-307, 609 South Port Street?
yes.
All right. And Ms. Junker, with respect to this appeal, we have that described as an appeal to construct a two-story rear addition and rooftop deck at this location. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And Mr. French, anything on behalf of the Planning Department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Junker, anything further you would like to have added to the record at this time?
No, that email that I just submitted actually just represents both of them.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Zoning Board staff, having previously reviewed the application, we have determined that there's sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Next, 2017-294, 2028 through 2030 Fountain Street, Ellen Cherry.
That's us, Carlos Cherry.
Okay. Your name, sir?
Carlos Cherry, C-A-R-L-O-S.
Okay. All right. And you're Mrs. Cherry?
Yes.
All right. Mr. and Mrs. Cherry, we have this as an application to construct a new second and third floors with front decks, front entrance, two-car garage, and use as a single-family dwelling. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is correct.
All right. Mr. French, anything on behalf of the Planning Department?
Yes, thank you. Planning Department acknowledges that the Cherries have worked with the Planning Department on the design of this improvement. The property is located in the Fells Point Historic District and therefore is subject to CHAP review and approval. The department recommends approval of the application, subject to the conditions that the proposed addition to the existing structure and any related alterations to the existing structure are completed in accordance with the authorization to proceed issued by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation and construction approvals given by the Department of Planning. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. and Mrs. Cherry, those conditions stated by the Planning Department acceptable to you?
Yes.
All right. And is there anything further at this time that you would like to add to the record?
No, thank you.
All right. Zoning Board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thank you, Mr. French.
All right. Next, 2017-305, 1061 South Charles Street, Frank Shaulis.
Yes, sir, Frank Solis.
All right. Gentlemen, we have this as an application to add live entertainment to a tavern/restaurant at this location. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Mr. French, anything on behalf of the Planning Department?
Planning Department recommends approval of this application, subject to conditions that the applicant provide a copy of the security contract and these additional conditions. A copy of the use and occupancy permit for the premises must be kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. A copy of the written approval by the board of the live entertainment provided on the premises, including details of any restrictions or limitations on live entertainment provided, must be kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. And a copy of all other permits and licenses required pursuant to the written approval of the board must be kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. Thank you.
Okay. And gentlemen, are those conditions stated by the Planning Department acceptable to you?
Yes.
We also have a letter from the Federal Home Neighborhood Association
Yes, I was going to get to that. It's to our understanding that there's a memorandum of understanding with the applicable community association in this case?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And we have that in the record, Mr.
Yeah,
Tanner?
they attach a copy of the MOU along
All
with their letter.
All right, we'll incorporate that memorandum of understanding into our decision in this case. Is there anything further that you would like to have added to the record this time?
Nothing.
All right, zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
Take care. Next, 2017-308, 3250 East Fayette Street, Sean Kennedy.
That's me.
All right. Sir, we have this as an application to construct a one-story rear addition at this location. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Mr. French, is there anything on behalf of the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Kennedy, was there anything further you would like to have added to the record at this time?
Not at this time.
Okay. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed the application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve the appeal.
Thank you very much.
Next, 2017-309, 1255 Battery Avenue, R.S. Sathis.
Yeah, I'm representing him. I'm
Okay.
Ian Seipel.
Your name, sir?
Ian Seipel.
Okay. Mr. Seipel, we have this as an application to construct a three-story rear addition and third-floor deck at this location. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Mr. French, is there anything on behalf of the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Seipel, is there anything further to that you would like to add to supplement the record in this case?
Nothing further. Thanks.
All right. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed the application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Next, 2017-314, 3112 Fleet Street, Steve Carroll.
Yes, sir.
Afternoon, sir. We have this as an application to construct a two-story rear addition with rear and rooftop decks at this location. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Mr. French, is there anything from the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Carroll, anything further you would like to add to the record in this case?
No, sir.
All right. Zoning board, zoning board staff, having previously reviewed the application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
Good luck. All right, last but not least, 2017-316, 2040 Rockrose Avenue, Carlton Gilbert.
That's me.
Afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
We have this as an application to install 8 antennas and 1 microwave antenna onto an existing tower at this location. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Mr. French, anything on behalf of the planning department?
Yes, Planning Department recommends approval of this application, subject to these conditions. The antennas may be painted to blend with the park hillside behind the property to ensure they are visually unobtrusive. The panel antennas and related equipment will remain mounted as illustrated in the plans and elevations submitted to planning. And the applicant will adequately mitigate any adverse effect as specified in the report of the Historical and Architectural Preservation Division of the Department of Planning in accordance with that report's recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Gilbert, are those conditions stated by the planning department acceptable to you?
They are.
All right. And is there anything further you would like to have added to the record?
Nothing further.
Okay. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed the application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve.
Thank you.
Good luck. All right. Next, we're going to address the remainder of our docket, which will include cases where opposition is signed in. Frequently, we found that opposition is a result of either a lack of communication or miscommunication between the parties, and it can be useful to offer the parties an opportunity to have a dialogue amongst themselves to see if they can resolve whatever differences they may have between them and whatever questions which may remain lingering at this point. You certainly don't have to accept the opportunity to speak with one another, but we certainly do encourage and appreciate it. Of course, if there are two sides who are in a dispute and those sides approach the board and ask the board to resolve that dispute, one of those two sides is bound to go away disappointed. So this is your opportunity to avoid that unhappy fate. So I'm going to read off the cases where opposition is signed in and just ask you to stand where you are. We'll ask if there's been any dialogue between the parties and whether or not the parties would like to either have a dialogue now or continue their dialogue now. If you would like to speak, all you have to do is just step out the double doors to your rear, and once you're done speaking, you just come back in. If you get anything worked out, just let us know, and we'll have that agreement placed on the record at that time. Otherwise, we'll call your case in turn. Next, we have, I guess, first on the list of cases where there's opposition, which is signed in, we have 2017-272, 337 South Chester Street, Darren Zimmer. Okay, and folks, have you all had an opportunity to speak?
Last time, but.
We have.
Okay. Any desire to continue speaking? No? No? Okay. All right, have a seat. We'll call you in turn. Next. 2017-306, 1000 through 1004 Eastern Avenue. Okay, have you folks all had an opportunity to speak?
I believe Mr. Barry has been to several community meetings, and he'll be over here shortly, and if he wants to speak to Ms. Bledman, they can. Other than that, we'll go forward in turn.
Okay, all right, please have a seat. 2017-317, 701 Bayless Street. Hi. And Ms. Junker, have you folks had any conversations?
Property owner, there's been some changes between the property owner and intends to continue discussion, but we're happy to continue doing it now as well.
Okay,
No, thank you. I've reached out to the owners when their property was broken into on the adjoining row home, and they didn't seem to know that people were in the abandoned property partying. When I reached out to them, I showed them the backyard. I have a picture.
well, we'll
Okay,
get to that
into
one.
Yeah, so I was so politely introduced myself and was treated with zero respect, so I have no interest in communicating with them. Thank
Okay,
you.
have a seat. We'll call you in turn. Okay. First case, we'll jump around a little bit. 2017-297, 447 South Bentlow Street, Zaid Sadiq.
Good evening.
Afternoon, sir. All right, you're Mr. Sadiq?
Yes,
All right, sir, we have this as an application to use this, use the first floor of the premises as a deli/carryout, is that correct?
right.
I'm sorry?
Yes,
Okay. If all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hands and be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
All right, and do we have staff reports?
Yes. Planning Department has reviewed this application, noted that this property is located in an R8 zoning district in which limited commercial uses are allowed under the category of neighborhood commercial establishment, which does require approval by the board. However, the neighborhood commercial establishments may not contain carry-out food shops, as that particular category is not listed as one eligible for consideration under that category. On that basis, the department recommends approval of the portion of this application relating to the retail goods establishment with no alcoholic beverage sales, and disapproval of the portion of this application relating to a carry-out food shop, because carry-out food shops are not eligible for approval as neighborhood commercial establishments under the zoning code. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Sadiq, did you understand the position of the planning department?
yes.
Okay, so why don't you start off by telling us what it is that you plan to do with your establishment?
I'll try to do the carry-out food business shop, and that's
I'm sorry?
carry-out food business shop.
Okay, so how would it operate? Are you looking to be primarily a sit-down restaurant?
No,
that
not
has
restaurant, just a carry-out food,
Just a,
community food store.
okay, so basically you'd have, people would call in their orders
Yes.
or they'd show up and you'd make it to order and they would
Make
carry
it
it
a
over.
carry-out.
Alright.
That's what-
And is there any ability to have seating inside?
No seating. No seating, just carry-out.
Just carry out. Okay. Now, the issue, I guess, with the planning department is that in the zone where you're located, that doesn't permit carry-out food establishments. However, the deli portion
That's
That is the preparation of cold foods, sandwiches and the like. That would be acceptable as the neighborhood commercial establishment, but not the portion regarding the preparation of hot foods and, ordering and carrying the food out. So that portion of your proposal wouldn't be approvable, though the deli portion would be. Is that how you intended to operate? That is, as a deli, or were you also looking to do the preparation of hot foods as well?
preparation hot food also, if it's possible.
Okay. Well, that part's not possible. The only part that would be the deli portion.
Oh, okay.
So that's just had the rules for the zoning district in which you're in for this classification of establishment under the zoning code. Yes, ma'am, if you can first state your name.
My name is Cynthia Tinsley. I'm president of the Carrollton Ridge Community Association.
Okay.
And we established the memorandum of understanding with Mr. Siddiq. He had also mentioned to us about having prepared foods, foods prepared outside, the possibility, for example, of Jamaican or international foods to be sold at the deli. I wonder if that would make a difference. Just that it could not be prepared on the premises.
We do have a copy of your signed memorandum of understanding, which indicates that the services include deli only, with plans to apply for future expansion to include carryout, which could be problematic given the zoning you're in. That may require some amendments to the code. And to include selling Jamaican and other international style hot foods, I think that's a discussion that needs to be made with the zoning administrator's office, along with the health department, to find out exactly what you would be allowed under the term deli. And I'm not sure that's something the board could answer right now. But if the board approved a portion as a deli, then you could work out the details with the enforcement people and the agencies involved, and hopefully we'd be able to come to a resolution of those questions. Or you may end up back here, it all depends. But that is spelled out pretty much in detail in your memorandum of understanding, if I have that correct.
Yes, sir. I did want to make a couple of corrections. For example, it was some typos in my memorandum of understanding. We actually go from the 1900 to the 2200 block as opposed to the 2100 block. And then I put your room numbers 250 as opposed to 215. But, and then you've also stated that it's pretty clear. We already have 13 grocery store, convenience stores in that small
Yes,
area.
you
Right.
identify all the neighboring businesses and
Correct.
so forth.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, was there anything else right now?
That's all.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Who did you say we should possibly talk to if we wanted to, the administrator?
Well, once the board makes their decision, we'll give you a written response, and you would then take that to the zoning administrator's office, and
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll call 2017-303, 101 North Patterson Park Avenue. Heather Smith. Good afternoon. You're Ms. Smith?
Yes, I am.
All right. And Ms. Smith, we have this as an application to use the first floor front as a restaurant, carry-out, and catering. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. If you can raise your right hand and be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. Do we have staff reports?
Yes, first we have a letter from the Patterson Park Neighborhood Association. They write, please accept this letter of support for 101 North Patterson Park. The association supports this effort by the applicant and looks forward to working together to add a strong and vibrant commercial establishment to the Patterson Park community. We also have a letter from Councilman Zeke Cohen. He writes, I am writing you regarding the request for a restaurant at 101 North Patterson Park Avenue. The association has lent their strong support for the creation of a new local business in their catchment area. For this reason, I also support the appeal as sought by the applicant and am in support of the community association's support of the appeal. And I believe Planning has a report.
Thank you. In some ways, this is analogous to the case just heard. This property is located in an R8 zoning district. There is a possibility for limited commercial use of the property under the category of neighborhood commercial establishment. However, in this particular situation, the applicant is proposing a carry-out food shop as part of the operation, and that is something that is not covered by the neighborhood commercial establishment category. Accessory catering could be approved subject to criteria that assure that its continuation remains subordinate to the principal restaurant use. Therefore, the Department of Planning recommends approval of the portions of this application relating to a restaurant with accessory catering, but disapproval of a carry-out food shop, which is not authorized by zoning code provisions covering neighborhood commercial establishments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Smith. Again, did you understand the position of the planning department?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, all right. So why don't you tell us about what you're planning on operating here?
So in my initial request was just to cover all the bases, but it's a sit-down dining establishment. The thought at the moment is breakfast and lunch with weekend brunches. The carry-out would just be super secondary to if someone couldn't stay to eat, they would take away, not operating as an actual carry-out.
Okay.
And then the catering piece would, again, was just to be as transparent as possible. I do cater at times, and I would use that kitchen to cater out of, assuming we opened up. So they would all be secondary to the point being a sit-down breakfast lunch establishment.
Okay. And that was one of the things that we wanted to clarify. As to what the principal use of the restaurant would be, how you were going to operate. As indicated by the Department of Planning, the accessory, I guess the catering portion could be operated as an accessory use. As well as, because the carry-out aspect is really incidental to the primary operation as a restaurant, that would be as well. The definition of accessory use under the code is that it's customarily incidental and subordinate use to the principal use of the lot or principal structure served and except in the planned unit development located on the same lot as the principal use or principal structure served. So both of those would seem to be applicable here. The operative words there being incidental and subordinate. So that's that you would have to operate primarily as a sit-down restaurant, and that not as a catering operation or as a carry-out food shop, and that both of those would have to be incidental aspects of the operation of the restaurant use.
Yes, sir.
I can't bring a proposed menu with you, did you?
No, I did not.
All right. Okay. Anything else at this time?
No, sir.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next, 2017-317, 701 Bayless Street, Lisa Junker. Okay, Ms. Junker, we have this as an application to construct a two-story rear addition and rooftop deck at this location. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And folks, if all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hands and be sworn, please.
You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, do we have staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
Hi.
Ms. Junker.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us about what's being proposed here?
We are proposing to do a two-story rear addition and a rooftop deck. And the purpose of the extended first floor rear addition is to provide off-street parking for the subject property. And the second floor rear addition is actually reduced, and then there's just a rear rooftop deck above that. The dimensions are, the first floor is a 14 by 21, and the 21 is to allow for the parking. And it's an angled access parking spot proposed. And then the second floor is a 14 by 16 for an additional room, and then there's the rooftop deck.
And before we turn to your,
Here's a cross-section. Ooh, can I look at that real quickly? Your plat map.
sure.
One thing I didn't have in my file.
Okay. And before we turn to your opposition, have you had any, has there been any dialogue with the opposition in this case?
I will allow Mr. Coleman, who is the property owner, to address the attempts at communication. There's been communication attempts, as well as a required notification that we forwarded a letter from Mr. Coleman, and he was unable to get that signed in pursuit of confirming that discussions had taken place or there was any issues or comments. So, multiple attempts, incomplete conversations, and that's the best that I can testify at this point. Am I-
What were these multiple communication? Okay, sorry. Okay, sure, please.
Attempts was the word I believed I used.
Yes, she reached out previously about some bushes in the rear of the house.
Your name, sir?
Alex Coleman.
Okay.
I
And you
s-
said she?
Yes, Tess.
Who are you referring to, sir?
It's Tess.
Okay.
I don't know her.
Okay, ma'am, could you state your name, please?
Sure, my name is Teresa Kellen. I'm a resident at 703 Bayless Street.
Okay, so you reached out to the
Yes.
direct neighbor.
Yes, I did. She reached out to us in reference to some bushes in the back of the house. I sent someone over there. They pulled all the bushes down that she had mentioned that she had filed a complaint about with the city. I met her in the alley. We spoke briefly. There were no other concerns brought up at that time. And she called about someone breaking into the house. The house been vacant for, I guess, many years. The property is demoed. I purchased the property. I was waiting on my CHAP approval. It was nothing I could do with the house. So someone broke in one night. I sent somebody over there the next day to make sure the property was secure. I didn't hear anything else from her. And then we reached out about the addition. She told the young man that works for me that she was fine signing the paper, and at the last minute she didn't. There was an issue with my brick guy who was working there. They had up scaffolding. They were pointing up the front, and I wasn't there that day. So I sent her a text message. I knocked on her door, and I called her. Just asked. I said, I heard there was an issue yesterday with the brick guy.
Okay,
I'd
if
like
I
to
can
remedy this
just jump in
situation.
Here, maybe I should have been a little bit more direct, but is there any dialogue concerning the issues which are raised in the appeal that is regarding the lot coverage and rear yard setbacks?
Sorry, no, we haven't spoken about that at all.
Okay, all right.
Hold on, I'd like to say one thing.
Yes.
Did you attempt to speak with the adjoining neighbor regarding your proposed development?
Yes.
And what attempts were made to communicate with the adjoining neighbor about your proposed development?
We called and sent a text message, and I knocked on the door.
And the letter that was stated that would be signed but wasn't signed, had it actually been delivered or dropped off or shared?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Ma'am?
Yes. Can I speak now?
Yes, if you
Okay.
can state your name again for the record.
Sure. Who are you? What's your name?
Lisa Junker.
And who are you? What
I
are you?
am hired, I am the representative for the property owner for the
Are
appeal.
you an attorney?
I don't need to be.
I was just
I am
asking
not.
your position. Just
I
a yes
said I
or no
was
question. Hired to do. It's just a question.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think I've answered it.
Okay, hi. I'm the resident at 703 Bayless Street. I've lived there since 2009.
Your name again, ma'am?
Teresa Callan, Callan, yes. I actually reached out to the phone number that was on on the banner of the home after I heard activity in there. It was broken into. I said, hi, I'm calling about 701 Bayless Street. And the guy said, I'm the owner. And I said, well, it was broken into. I'll be right there. His name was Tyler. I believe they're partners with Alex, the gentleman to my right. He came over. The front door was wide open. I showed him the backyard. This is what the backyard looks like. It's looked like that for 2 months. There's dead rats. The front of the property has been open. All the neighbors, they've been a complete nuisance to the neighborhood. I showed Tyler the backyard. He didn't seem to know. This is my fence in the back adjoining. And I said, can you please clean up this? It's a disaster. It's bringing in rats. We work really hard. It's a community, a street that works very hard to keep the neighborhood clean and safe. We spend a lot of time cleaning. And he copped an attitude and was like, oh, well, I have to get a CHAPS permit. And I called 311, and they said, you don't need a permit to clean up a backyard and to clean up weeds. So I responded to Tyler, you don't need a permit to clean up, and my fence is halfway down. So his partner came over, started pulling weeds, and got my fence back in shape. And then this gentleman, Alex, was in the alley. My neighbor, Chris, told me we have a new owner at 701. So I was very excited. I walked over, introduced myself to Alex, and the whole time looks down and says, I'm not Tyler. You talk to him on the phone. I'm building a garage. And that was the extent of our communication. I walked away and thought, okay, I'm not going to reach out to the owners of this property.
Okay.
Since Tyler had my phone number, I guess he shared it with Alex, who sent me a text message when I decided that I was not going to communicate with people who had no respect for the neighborhood or the street. So
Okay.
I didn't receive any letter. I'd like to see that in writing. I'd like to see proof that I received it. I do not have a letter from Alex, so I never was asked about signing a permit. So that's not a true statement.
Okay. What we're here on
Right,
today is there's a request from the property owner for a lot coverage variance and for a rear yard setback variance. Both of those have to do with the length of the addition which is being proposed here. Did you have any position relative to either of those?
Yes, actually, I disapprove of them building, and it's joint property at the roof level. It's going to block my view, so I'm not going to sign off on any permit for them to build a third level or a garage.
I'm sorry, we do not need her signature for permit approval. What we were attempting to do was communicate with her and get verification that she did not oppose the proposed construction.
Okay, well, they've worked without permits for months. They've been shut down by Pete Hammond, and they've broken the law. And if you check 311, you can see all the complaints on this vacant property. And I know this is about approval for building. when they have left a disgrace on our street. So please check 311 and look at all the complaints from all the neighbors that could not attend today.
Excuse me, I'd like to challenge part of her statement. She
If we
stated,
can finish
Yeah.
with the application first, because I think there was another
Yes.
woman
like
who'd
to
like to
oh, I'm
speak.
sorry.
My name is Melvin Northern. I am a neighbor there. I have a carport in the back of my home. If he puts a carport or a garage, it's right facing, it's an alley and an alley. No way can someone park there and get out, because he's going to be bumping into the car in back of him.
It's an angular alley. It allows him
It
to.
is?
Yes, it isn't, it's an,
Well, that's why the trash men have trouble, and they have to put all their trash cans there.
All right, ma'am, you're at, what's your address again?
My address is 711 South Bayless.
Okay. All right, so you're a little bit further down the block.
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Okay.
But I have to come up that way, and like I say, that house has been vacant for years. And now, since they sold it, it's a mess. It's a slum. Dead rats in the yard, and before they put a deck up, they should clean the yard, or even try to put a car thing in there. It is horrible.
Dead rats, they're very aware of it, and they just roll their eyes at me, so I've decided
I
not
just
to
wish-
talk with them, and this is what they have no permit.
excuse me, can we continue with the purpose of the hearing? Because I'm trying very hard to address the case matter.
Thank you, Ms. Junker, but, well,
Lady, he is.
That's why I asked him.
if we can have some decorum, please, ladies.
I'm sorry, also, she said that I was.
Sir, we'll turn back to you. I'd like to hear from the opposition. I'm trying to look at the plans which are drawn here. Now, ma'am, you had raised an issue with the parking and the position of the garage doors.
It would help if
I-
you looked at the cross-section.
Excuse me, there is no garage doors there now.
Well,
All
I
it
know,
is an
ma'am,
extension.
ma'am, I understand that there are no garage doors there currently. I was addressing the proposal.
For the girls, that would be right here.
Yes, for the garage, which would be here. So
That's where
this
it's
is what's,
Hold back.
I'm not sure that it would look like that once it's finished, ma'am, but this is what's being proposed here, that there's not, that it doesn't go all the way out to the end, and that it's on an angle there.
Angle, what
that would-
street are you talking about?
So
There's
this is
two
in the,
alleys.
ma'am,
I'm asking you to
if this
explain.
is the alley here, okay? This is the house, this is the corner. So what's being proposed is that this garage here would be angled so that this car would not be pulling straight out back. It would be pulling in on an angle to access this, which would go around the side in order to allow access. Importantly, however, that's what I thought. That may well be, however, there are no parking variances which are needed with respect to this property. So the design and construction of the proposed garage is yet another issue which is not involved in this appeal. If you have conditions regarding the condition of the property, that is a housing code enforcement issue, which this board doesn't have jurisdiction over. So if there are conditions in the property where it's not being kept or maintained as required under the housing code, those are issues which you should continue pursuing with the pertinent authorities. However, the board isn't in charge of those issues. Was there anything further from?
Yeah, I'd like to show you a picture of, this is the alley you're talking about.
It goes like this.
So that's the property.
No way.
And that's the scaffolding. And this white part is where cars, that's Foster Street. That's their driveway. That's their parking Okay, so it's being blocked, the fire department's been called. I know you don't seem very interested, but it's a fire hazard. They've worked without permits, they've stolen city water. I have pictures of that, so.
Excuse
I'm
me,
not
can
gonna
we
give up,
continue?
And, it's really disrespectful to buy a piece of property and people that have lived there for 8, 9 years, some third generation, and they just leave trash, park in the middle of the street, destroy my personal property. No one cares. But guess who does? I do. And I'm gonna keep pursuing it. They leave it open, there's rodents, and you wanna give them a permit to build more? When look what they've done in the past 2 months. Made it's disgrace. That's all I have to say. Is it finished?
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Um,
Ms. Junker.
Yes, first I'd like to show a document and the certified receipt and the attempt to actually communicate with the neighbor with any of the proposed construction.
I'd like to see it too. Don't I get to see it first?
Yes, please.
Thanks. Since I'm the neighbor, I do have a name. You don't have to roll your eyes. I mean, if you're going to be respectful and respected.
Folks, can we have some decorum?
Sure. This is a certified mail receipt. That there's no letter. So do you have a copy of the letter you put in this certified? This isn't a copy of what you said. Oh, dear neighbor. Okay. Okay. So the permits are supposed to go on the top, on the front door, correct? When someone's building, they tape the permit to the front door. That's something they
That's
haven't done.
enforcement issue again. It doesn't
Okay.
really deal with the appeal, but, you know, you had made a reference that no one cared. I think it's quite the opposite, that the issues that you've mentioned, I've urged you to continue pursuing. You just need to pursue those to the relevant agencies.
I have,
So,
yes, it's all
okay.
documented, if you have a moment to check. I mean, would you all want to live next to that? I'm just wondering.
But that's
I
not,
just-
but ma'am, do you understand that that's
But
not
that
really?
just is a.
But that's not the
it's a
issue which is
reflection
before.
of how they.
Ma'am, that's not an issue
That's
which
fine.
is before this board.
But it's a reflection of their character.
That
It is.
might be.
It is.
That may well be, but that doesn't really touch on the question of whether or not the
They should- right.
variances which are
Right,
being sought here
it blocks
should
my
be
view, so I oppose.
The sooner we can begin construction, the better your view will become.
the,
You have to get legal permits. You can't just build in hyphen city water. That's called the police every day, so there's records of everything. They had to stop work because they didn't have permits, and
okay.
that's a
Ms.
fact.
Junker, is there anything further at this point?
If he's talking to you, answer, and let's move on, please.
Is there anything further?
Yes, please. Also, as part of the process to pursue the permits, we notified the affected community associations to see if there were any concerns. We notified the Brewers Hill Community Association, we notified the Canton Highland Town Community Association, and we notified the Canton Community Association as well. Here are copies of the letters that were sent.
So what, they don't live on Beta Street, just so you know. Here's one of his workers stealing money, stealing water.
Can I speak? Yes, Melvin Northern, 711 South Bayless. What I'm getting at is, she can get to Brewers Hill, because Brewers Hill is on the other side of Foster Avenue. We are Canton.
But, ma'am,
We
I
live on
think
the
that,
street where he wants to do construction, so I.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So why get them involved?
I think that they were
I can answer that question.
probably.
Oh, I would-
Please do.
Oh,
Please do.
Ms.
please
Junker.
don't, let him, he's
No.
he's
Any
the chairperson.
construction will need a permit, and it has to comply with the code. This is an application to pursue approval to get a permit. The garage, the question I have about the garage is, I don't believe you can put 2 cars in a garage.
That wasn't our intent.
Well, that's what the drawing
That's
shows.
what the drawing is.
Our intent is to do one car. Honestly, I hear you. It's a 21-foot car. It's a depiction. It's a 21-foot deep garage.
You can't
That's a
back
design.
a car out of the garage to get another car in.
They're not allowed, there's two things. I agree with you. One, a parking space is supposed to be 180 square feet. Okay, so having 21-foot depth does not allow for 2 parking spaces, even if they're not independent, okay, even if they're stacked. But that being said, the purpose of having the turning radius on the property itself and having the angled access at the intersection of the alleys, okay, was to allow for a parking space. How the architect showed it on the plans, we are happy to modify that for the record, but the intent is to provide one single off-street parking space that allows for, I can't take this.
I think functionally, we all understand that.
So that was the intent.
Spaces only count as one space.
Exactly, and the bottom line is that is if we're only trying to meet parking requirements, and this is currently non-compliant with parking, so it would bring it into compliance, which raises the other issue with the alleyway being only 12 feet. I knew where you were going. So therefore, back to the issue that was asked of me, why I would bother communicating with any of the other community associations, is that Baltimore City's Department of Planning has a website, and if you put in your property address, it gives to you a list of suggested community associations or groups that you should reach out to if they are indirectly or related or directly related to your proposed development. So from this 2-page list, we narrowed it down to those that govern the properties in the surrounding area. What we try to do is give notice to any of those that might be overlapping or might have some nominal interest in the proposed development. From there, I made the list of 3. That is why I contacted community associations other than Canton to notify them of the proposed development. It is an end-of-unit house. It's an intersection.
Importantly, as you understand it, the property falls within the boundaries of the Canton Community Association.
Understood, and Canton was notified and communicated with at great length.
You understood that, well, and you followed that up with communicating to the Canton Community Association.
Not only did we send the letter certified, but there was ongoing dialogue through emails directly between Mr. Coleman and myself. I directed him specifically to the process that he should follow, how to further the discussion, because that was the targeted community which this property falls within. But as a courtesy, we gave notification to the other property community associations as well.
Okay.
Sometimes they have shared interest in overlap. I would like to be the one to conclude this zoning hearing because I believe that is the process. If there's any more questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm happy to provide any additional information. But the basis of our request is so we can get the permit issued so we can continue construction and improving upon the site's conditions.
Excuse me, I'd like to comment on that.
Of course you would.
Well, but
Yes,
ma'am,
because I just want to say really quickly that whatever course you both took and flipped that house, you did not take into consideration that we are a historic
Thank you.
neighborhood, and my personal private property has been damaged as a result of
but ma'am,
their
we
purchase.
can't do
Okay,
anything about
okay,
that.
thank you for your time. Thank you.
Is there anything else?
Not at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Can I say?
We're off the record now.
Okay. Well, off the record, they should come down and see it's an alley and an alley. The trash men cannot even get down and run out. They have to use the main.
It's okay, it's dead rats in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay. Calling 2017-261, 6 North Montford Avenue, Zainab Najadi.
Mr. Prettle just stepped out to get on Mr. Barry. He might be a couple minutes.
Okay,
Chair will call on the case.
okay. All right, we'll move on. All right, we'll call 2017-272, 337 South Chester Street, Darren Zimmer.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's also a in this case.
Okay. Let this be a lesson. Stay in the room lest your case be called, and then you get skipped. 2017-295, 608 South Fagley Street, Steve Carroll. All right, Mr. Carroll.
Sir.
We have this as an application to construct a second floor rear deck at this location. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Sir, actually, you've already been sworn. So do we have any staff reports?
Yes, first we have a letter. The Brewers Hill Neighborhood Association opposes the appeal for 608 Fagley Street for the addition of a rear second-story porch in the strongest possible terms. We do this for the following reasons. As you can see from the attached photos, the entire second-story porch is already in place. These photos were taken on August 17th. The hearing is not until August 29th. This makes a mockery of the entire zoning appeals process and leaves the citizens of Brewer Hill with no avenue to disagree, but is also very disrespectful of the zoning appeal board. Since the zoning appeal has not been approved, there could not have been a permit issued. Therefore, there's no way to know if the proper materials were used or if it is built to the standards for this type of structure. Additionally, this structure robs the neighbors located at 606 and 610 Fagley Street of privacy in the rear second floor rooms. These typically are bedrooms and possibly a bathroom. There is one other reason no other house on this block has such a porch. That is one other reason. Our association believes that if this appeal is granted, it will send a message to other developers operating in Southeast Baltimore that it's okay to build whatever they wish, that it's better to ask for forgiveness rather than to seek permission. These are the photographs. That's a duplicate copy. Okay, that's what I thought.
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Carroll.
Yes, sir.
They started off with, we've got this as an application to construct a second floor rear deck. Have you seen this letter from the Brewers Hill Neighborhood Association?
I have not.
Okay. The issue they raise is that the deck has been constructed. So why don't you tell us about sort of where things are in the process and then sort of how we got there?
Sure. I guess it's kind of hard to stand here and say that a lot of times we push the envelope with building in certain situations where we don't think there's going to be any opposition, and there is no opposition. You know, I was very friendly with the neighbors. I actually provided a parking pad for the one neighbor and spoke to the other neighbor. And this particular deck appeal would, I don't want to say always be approved, but never be an issue. I'm very surprised that this wasn't on the consent docket, so I'm a little caught under, a little surprised myself, but totally guilty. I mean, everything that he stated is absolutely correct, but I don't think that, they're absolutely correct. I understand where they're coming from, and they feel that, they were maybe done wrong, but I believe that there's no opposition, that this appeal would typically be granted, and I'm not sure, this is the first time I've ever been in this situation, where someone has actually stated that. But like I said first, I hate to stand here and say that that's common, that it does happen, but it happens more often than, I don't know, maybe if you guys know, or maybe you do know, I don't know, but it's very common that this kind of happens. You know, we have our concrete pad permit issued. When the inspector comes out, we'll tell them that we have a footers also for the future deck, and then they'll actually write that on the inspection sticker. That so they kind of understand. And I've actually been told that, you know, that okay, I see your footers. It's called a monolithic pour. We'll pour the parking pad. We'll pour the footers for future deck, and then we're told, you know, hey, if it's not approved, you know, down it comes. So I apologize, I don't have my plans in front of me, but I believe the lot is 65 feet long. I believe the existing foundation is 42.6, so 42 feet 6 inches. I believe if I built, the deck is proposed at 12 feet. I believe if I had built it at 10 feet, that I wouldn't even have needed zoning approval, because I would have had a 10-foot rear yard setback, so I wouldn't even have.
You can project 8 feet,
8 feet?
but you still need a permit.
Absolutely. I'm guilty as charged. Everything you stated is absolutely true. My apologies. And, you know, in no way, you know, I you know, wouldn't disrespect the community. I've bought, purchased, and sold Mason properties, over 250 properties in Canton, Fells Point, Highlandtown area. I've never done a house in Federal Hill, so just in that area, my company has personally developed and sold over 250 properties, and I'm a little shocked that the community, they didn't even contact me, but I certainly understand their concern.
We know there's been no enforcement action initiated
No, sir.
for building without the permit,
Not a word.
but to go in and get a permit retroactively, they're probably going to slap you with a fine.
Possibly.
But it's an enforcement question again.
You certainly wouldn't do this again in the future, correct?
No, sir. We learn our lessons the hard way, so this would be a lesson learned.
And is this part of a renovation that you were doing? Is this just a deck that was being constructed?
Yes, sir. It's no additions. We left the property completely intact, renovated the property. It's a second floor deck with a door that leads to it. And the reason we asked to make it a little bigger than we could have done without asking is for a future rooftop deck. In that particular area, there's no view. It backs up to literally the back wall is, there's an alley, and then there's a two-story building that runs the whole length of the alley. There's no view. There's no view for the neighbors. It's literally a brick wall you're looking out. So the deck is a little outdoor space, and then it's also a future way to get to a rooftop deck if the purchaser wanted to pursue that. It's basically, a lot of the houses in Brewers Hill don't get decks at all, but it's just a.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
(2017) -301, 4700 through 4710 Prudence Street, Jerry Sterling. Afternoon, sir.
Hello.
This is an application to install a mounted nameplate sign and an electronic messaging sign at this location. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Sir, if you could raise your right hand and be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Do you have staff reports?
Planning Department reviewed this application, which was, as it stated, for a sign which would include a 4-foot 5-inch, not 4.5, 4-foot 5-inch by 7-foot 3-inch LED message center sign below the main sign or in its lower portion. The issue the Planning Department observed was that this type of LED sign is not authorized. Specifically, electronic message signs are allowed in certain specific districts spelled out in the zoning code in section 17-803A. However, this property is in a zoning district which does not allow this type of sign. This is an R5 residential zoning district, and therefore the department recommends disapproval of the application because the proposed sign is prohibited from including or containing an electronic message sign or electronic message component in the R5 zoning district where the property is located. The department recommends the applicant consider obtaining a permit to replace the existing non-LED sign with a similar non-LED sign if the current sign is no longer appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Sterling. I guess there's sort of the place to start off. So why don't you tell us about what kind of sign you're proposing here, and if you could address the comments made by the representative of the Department of Planning.
Absolutely. I guess starting off, every time I do sell a job, or it's not certain say if I sell a job, I do my due diligence, what we can and can't have. I told the customer I would go down, research it. When I called zoning, gave them the address, they said, yes, they can have a digital sign. I said, okay. I went ahead and pursued it with the customer. They were excited about it. They wanted to do it. When I went to secure the permit, Mr. Lee, which is not who I talked to originally down there, I've dealt with Mr. Lee for years. He said, you know what, Jerry, the code has changed. You can't do a digital sign there. And I said, well, okay, what would I have to do to see if I could get it approved? Because I did come down and they said we could have it. I wasn't aware of it, but I did get the customer excited. They want to do it. I said, it's a community, it's a church. I'm not looking to break the rules. You know what I mean? I said, so what would be the procedure? And he said, go down, file for this, come down for the zoning. I said, okay. Now, I've had a lot of requests for these signs in the last year, even more than that. We've been in business over 50 years. We're a family business. I still, every week, I have somebody calls me that wants to put a digital sign up. And I'll look at it, and I look at the codes and that, and if they're not in the right zoning, I'll say, yeah, absolutely, can't do it. And I double and triple check at this point, just to make sure, because I don't want to mislead anybody. Long and short of it is, most churches are in residential areas. I have churches every week that call me for these digital signs. I don't really know the answer to help them out to get them. They're not looking to advertise as you would as a commercial business. They just want to bring awareness that they have events at their church and everything. A lot of the churches, they're trying to get the youth involved. They think that the digital is nice because it gives them some creativity, something to do too. Another portion is a lot of the other churches I deal with are a lot of elderly people, and they can't physically lift the Lexan covers and change the copy.
Yeah.
And I've even had customers injured by, they prop them up with sticks and stuff to try to do it, and I please advise them not to do that. But so, long and short of it is, we're trying to get this approved for this church. For one, because I did tell them they could have it. I already talked to them about it. They're aware they may not be able to have this. The church does, on the street where the existing sign is, and I made copies because I didn't have it at the time when I filed, which I'd like to give you guys a copy of. I made a copy of the new sign, the existing sign, and also the street views, because it does face a vacant lot where they do. Is it okay if I pass these out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
what you're referring to?
Yes. I do have a
Mhm.
where it does, I'm sorry, where it does face the vacant lot, it's there. Now, there are other, I've sold these signs in historical areas. I've, a lot of churches in historical areas in Anne Arundel County. We've put them, and the reason we use, it's called Watchfire, is the company that builds this particular sign. And quite honestly, it's the best one on the market. But they are very friendly, which I'd like to give you one more brochure with, which if you guys would take in consideration, we can program the sign for the different nits for the lighting, which what that is how bright the sign is. You know, we can make it the same as a fluorescent sign, which they have right now. And most historic societies that we've worked with, that's exactly what they asked us to do. Can you turn the sign down to 400 nits at night, 7,500 during the day, which is not an over-glaring sign. And we're more than willing to do that. We have capabilities of doing that. And even if you guys would want to put stipulations in that they can only change messages so often, if you want to rule out they couldn't, put videos on the sign, that's fine. Quite honestly, all these signs are capabilities of doing some of this stuff, but very few people do it, especially in churches. Commercial establishments tend to abuse the rules, and it's very carnival-like in certain areas. But there is a lot of friendly zoning stuff with these signs that we can customize it, where it does make it friendly for the community.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we did post the sign up here, and nobody seemed to have a problem to oppose it. A lot of people in the community actually seem excited about it because they do go to the church.
I saw Councilman Rising here earlier. Was he here speaking with you?
No, he was not.
Okay.
Mhm.
Just curious.
Mm-hmm. But
Church Bay?
yeah, I think he is Curtis Bay, because my shop's in Curtis Bay, right up from the church there, and very, very nice gentleman. But I'd like to give you guys this too, if you like to look at this information here. This will show you the capabilities we have to actually control this sign. Where we can actually customize it if you guys.
The reason I was asking about the councilman was because if something like this were to ever get amended, it would go through that route.
Yeah. And I even asked Mark that I work with the city to try to get this, where churches could have this, because I get I'm sorry, sir.
That's okay.
I get
That's
so
okay.
many people to call about this that I'd like to try to help out with it.
So what would be on this sign?
They can put any advertisements, yes, sir, that the city will allow them if you want to, but mostly with most churches, what they do is they give hours of worship a lot of times if they're having a benefit. A lot of benefits from churches that really takes the burden off the city too. If they have food drives, if they have, they have a Christmas play there or something, or, that's what churches use these signs for. The most messages from churches, and I've dealt with these, with churches for over 20-some years of just doing electronic signs and everything. They don't tend to advertise like a commercial business, They're just trying to put their message out there, especially if they're trying to get like the youth to come in and get people into the church. And it has been very effective for bringing new people into the church because they do need members to survive.
You don't take liberties at bingo night?
Well, they could advertise that if they're going to have that.
Now, this, tell me about this screen. Is it like it's like a TV screen?
It's not it's not a TV screen. What they are is they're made up of 12 by 12 squares, basically. All electronic signs are a little different.
Mm-hmm.
The high quality ones are made up of 12 by 12 squares. And what they have is they have 3 LEDs okay? It's almost, I don't want to compare it to like a light bright when you see lights in there, but what it is it's a 3 LED module. And, you know, it's like the 3 colors, the blue, red, and green, and that's what tends to make any color you want, pretty much. And what they do is, these signs right here are 16 and 12 millimeter. What they are is how many millimeters your LEDs are apart. That doesn't determine how bright your sign is. It just determines how clear your picture would be onto it. If smaller the sign, usually the tighter you want your LEDs, because you need them tighter to see, you know, more of it if you want to put a picture or something on there, so it's not so pixelated. Even copy, you don't want it to look like jagged edges and pixelated, so you go a little tighter with your LEDs. And of course, larger signs like the billboards on the Beltway, they're actually 24 millimeter. They're spread tremendously apart, but they're, you know, 80 feet in the air, 80 feet back. You just don't realize. It just looks clear because it's so overwhelming and big with that. The majority of the complaints I've ever had about LED boards is the brightness of them. And that's what I was saying, that with churches, I always ask them to be turned down because you don't need them over glaring anyway.
Okay. I'll pose this to either you or Mr. French, because or maybe Mr. French, it'd be good to get some input here. As I'm looking at the code on the definition of electronic message signs, the code defines an electronic message sign as a sign or portion of a sign that uses changing lights to form a message or messages in text form, where the sequence of messages and the rate of change is electronically programmed and can be modified by electronic processes. That's electronic message signs. For electronic display screen signs, it says, in general, electronic display screen sign means a sign or portion of a sign that displays an electronic image or video, which may or may not include text. Inclusions: electronic display screen sign includes television screens, plasma screens, digital screens, flat screens, LED screens, video boards, and holographic displays. So, what are we, between those two, which one are we dealing with here?
Well, what it is it's an LED display, so it's LED modules. It's not a plasma. It's not.
It's an LED screen.
It's not a screen.
Okay.
And it's a little difficult. I wish I would have brought a sample to show you, because it's not. When you say a screen, that's a continuous, like it would be like your TV in your house, or like what they have at Raven Stadium or BWI Airport. And yeah, they do make them, but that's not because they're so over enormous expensive, for one, that's not what the public uses. And yet we probably mislabel what the exact term of these are, but they are exactly what they say is an electronic message center. But it's because you're basically programming this on your computer, and you're sending it out to the sign, and that's where, you know, that the electronic stuff's coming from, like that. And what it does is it has a small drive in the sign which stores it, and then you just upload your copy to it. But they're not screens. It's dots that make up the pixels that make up the image.
Okay. All right. Well, that's that's actually helpful.
Okay.
All right. All right. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Field 312 is the exact same issue.
Okay. 2017-312, 5401 through 5407 Lock Raven Boulevard, Mackenzie Services, Inc.
tough act to follow.
Afternoon, sir. Your name?
David McKenzie.
All right. And Mr. McKenzie, we have this as an application to install a freestanding ID sign with electronic message center. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, sir, if you can raise your right hand and be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Do we have staff reports?
Yes, the Planning Department reviewed this application, and very much like the preceding appeal which you've just heard, the Planning Department notes that this property is also a religious institutional property located in a residential zoning district, R5, and the request is for a freestanding identification sign including an electronic message center, and as noted previously, the zoning code does not allow these to be installed in this particular property. It contains a list of the zoning districts in which these signs are allowed, but our zones are not included on that list. Therefore, the Department of Planning recommends disapproval of the application because the proposed sign is prohibited from including or containing an electronic message sign or electronic message component in the R5 zoning district where the property is located. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. McKenzie.
Yes.
So you've got the benefit of seeing the prior case. So given sort of the issues which we've discussed, why don't you tell us about what is being proposed here, if it's any different,
Okay.
and it's kind of how we wound up at this point.
Well, he covered a lot of great ground for me, so I appreciate that. You guys all have this, right? The before and after?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. So you can see that we're using the existing base, and they just want to change it out to, it's the exact same size. It's going to bolt right down to the same foundation and use the existing power. Just like he said, it has a lot of settings on it. We can dumb it down. We can even make it turn off at night if that's an issue, as well as dim out. There's other timers and settings for lots of other things. And then, of course, like he said, the benefits are events, go team. I saw one on here. Actually, I Googled this from last year, and it said, welcome back, such and such. I think they had a teacher out sick or something. And they put that message up. Same idea, 3-color digital display. It's 3 little modules together on a panel. And then by utilizing their turning on and off makes the digital message. If it makes any difference, I don't know that it will. This is across the street. That's another one. That's on a church across the street from this one. I don't know how they got it. Or maybe it's because they're a church. I don't know. But if you Google the street view and swing over.
Well, I think what the difference is that the code changed so that impacts this kind of significantly.
Baltimore City's under a new code as of July 1.
That's what I was told too.
And again, this is not really a screen per se. It's rather, as you described it, more like a
message center.
Like a board. All right. Okay. Questions?
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
The number you gave earlier, is that an automated line for?
No, that's the direct line for the zoning board office.
Okay.
So you'll call there, and then someone pick up.
And after what time?
Good question. Mr. Bongoner?
Great people in there.
After 8:30.
After 8:30? Yeah. All right, thank you very much.
All right, take care. They're all there. Okay. Starting from the top again. 6 North Montford Avenue. Case number 2017-261, Zainab Najadi. Brittle. All right, and you're Ms. Najati?
Najati.
I'm sorry?
Najati.
Najati, okay. All right, folks, we have this as a negative appeal. And it is to prohibit a permit seeking to, quote, build a new 8 foot by 13 foot second floor addition on existing second floor, install new door and window, build none 8 by 12 deck on rear of, I guess that means second floor. Addition, extend the first floor back, and then it's all per sketch per code, according to permit number COM 2017-09800, which was issued on May 24th of this year at the property known as 6 North Montford Avenue. You get that right?
Nate Prettle, AB Associates. Should I be sworn in? I think I may be able to make this very short here.
Yes, we'll get to that point. I was just confirming sort of what we're here on. So if got all that description correct, why don't you folks raise your right hands and be sworn in, and we'll move on from there.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if you should allow me, I'm here on behalf of the property owner, and before we get into all this, I would say that I acknowledge, and so does the property owner, that this permit was issued in error. The contractor he had hired submitted drawings to the city which misrepresented, I believe, both the length of the lot as well as portions of the addition, and the city in turn, in error, issued it based on these faulty drawings. So I'm not here opposing her negative appeal. I think it's valid, and the course of action that the property owner is going to take is eventually file a positive appeal, likely for something different, knowing the adjacent neighbor's opposition. So I'm just going to leave it. I'm not going to get into whatever the applicant here would like to say, but if that's enough, we acknowledge that it was issued in error and requested to be revoked. I tried to meet with the zoning administrator over the past week. I wasn't able to. I was ideally going to have him revoke the permit prior to this hearing and not have to have it go forward. So I'll leave you with that and before we get into the rest of it.
Ms. Najati, it seems as though you've won the war before the battle even started. So is there, given that the owner concedes that the permit was issued in error, is there anything further?
I don't know how this normally is supposed to work, but I guess, I mean.
You have a good result.
I guess yes. Well, I mean, like, is it actually, like, is that, I guess, what's gonna happen? Like, the
Well, so as I understand where things stand is that there was a permit which was issued back in May. You filed this negative appeal saying that the permit should not have been issued and it should be revoked. That's your position, correct?
Yes, and also that, I guess that
You had a lot of other concerns.
yeah, I have a lot of other concerns. It wasn't just the permit was issued in error because it didn't come before the board, but also that even if it came before the board, this property is not unique and also harms me and my property values, and therefore should not be allowed to have a variance in order to build the addition. So it's two parts, I guess.
So it sounds like what you want to do is try to be prospective as to say that, well, not only shouldn't it have been issued, but the things that it needs in order to do what they're seeking shouldn't, they shouldn't get a permit for that because if they sought those things, they wouldn't satisfy the requirements for a variance, which they would be asking for at that time. It's sort of the long and the short of it.
Yes, if I'm pretty sure what perspective means. This word, right?
All right. So I think where we are right now is that there was a permit which was issued. It sounds like everyone concedes it was issued in error and it should be revoked. Given that everyone agrees to that, well, okay, that makes it really simple. As to the other issues which you seek to raise, that is, well, okay, now let's get into kind of what they would seek if they were seeking a variance. Well, they're not seeking one yet. So you can reserve those arguments for when and if they do come forward, because right now they haven't requested any variances because they're not here on a positive appeal. That is, they're not seeking to establish a right to anything or ask for any kind of relief. They're only here on your negative appeal, and the relief that you are seeking is the revocation of the permit, which they agree to.
Okay. So we're done? Like, it's actually revoked?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
awesome. Thank you.
So now they've indicated that they may be filing their own appeal to seek relief of their own. And so, we may be back here. You guys will be switched around.
And they'll have to post a sign if they do that.
That's right.
Okay.
But as for today, we're done.
If I may add one other thing, I think the property owner, as well as myself as a representative, would love to work with the applicant of the negative appeal, and I would hope that what we come back for is not the same thing that she feels, she was aggrieved in the first place, and ideally, we will be on the same side. I don't know if that's possible. We don't have plans yet. I intend to reach out to the adjacent owner and start a dialogue prior to submitting a zoning appeal.
Okay, I think that would probably be useful. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care. All right. Next, calling case number 2017-272, 337 South Chester Street, Darren Zimmer. Okay, howdy, folks. All right, and Mr. Prettle, you're here with Mr. Zimmer?
That's correct.
All right, and we have this as an application to construct a 3-story rear addition and 3rd floor rear deck at this location. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, if all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hands and be sworn, please.
They swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
All right, do we have staff reports?
Yes, we have a letter. They write, "My husband and I live at 302 South Chester Street and have a concern about the redevelopment of the property 337 South Chester Street. Mr. Zimmer currently owns 2 properties on South Chester Street. He purchased the property at 335 in 2015 and said that he was going to be our new neighbor. We took him at his word. When damage was done to the adjacent property, 333, he said he would take care of it, and since he was going to be a new neighbor, the homeowners next door took him at his word, but no repairs were made. Then in 2017, he purchased the property 337, turned this into his permanent residence, and made 335 a rental property. Now Mr. Zimmer is developing 337, and it appears like the same thing is happening. The property is listed as his permanent residence, and he is damaging the adjacent property. During demolition, dust, paint chips, and other debris billowed out of the house and into anyone home with open windows. For those of us without central air, this was a problem because we did not know if it was asbestos, lead paint, or any other potential hazard. It seems to me that with this type of demolition, there should have been some kind of containment and oversight. The entire back of the house is open. The permit information regarding 337 is listed below. I am concerned about the quality of new construction. It appears he is cutting corners and not following proper codes and procedures. Thank you for your attention in this matter." They referred to the permit number COM 2017-13407, interior work, non-bearing stud walls, plaster, trim, installation, flooring, roofing, debris, as per code. And then there's the reference to this zoning board case number. Does planning have a report?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Prettle, why don't you tell us about what's being proposed here and what relief you're seeking?
Sure. Good afternoon. Nate Prettle from AB Associates. I'm here with the property owner, Darren Zimmer, who I was contacted by his engineer several days prior to the originally scheduled hearing 2 weeks ago. And once I began looking at the file, I realized the engineer he'd hired to submit the application made several mistakes that really needed to be clarified before we could go forward with the hearing based on the merits. The initial mistake is that it was listed as a single-unit property. This is in fact a legal 2-unit property, and I'm going to submit some documents. Here's a zoning card showing 2 units since 1931. This is from the Department of Housing showing 2 units as recently as August 17th of this year. And here are pictures showing the multiple kitchens. This was right before some of his demo work occurred about a month ago. So in terms of the view of housing and the zoning office, the 2 units is not a dispute. This is a legal 2-unit property. It's always been used in 2 units. The second issue was the plans originally did not reflect that. That was an issue between Mr. Zimmer and his engineer who submitted the application. Since then, we've submitted revised plans, which are essentially, other than a very slight change in some notations, the same as what was originally submitted. However, it's much clearer that there are 2 units. You should have those in your file. I've got another copy right here. As far as the relief we're seeking from the zoning code, we have an existing 3-story structure that was built to the rear lot line. In an R8 zoning district, a multifamily property is required to provide, cover no more than 80% of the lot, provide a 25-foot rear yard setback. Those conditions already were exceeded by the existing property. The proposal today was to demolish certain portions of those, the existing property and build a longer 3rd floor and build into the side yard. I mentioned this is absolutely a unique property. It's 17 feet wide. It is the largest property in terms of lot area on the existing block face, which covers between Bank and Gulf Street, as well as Chester and Duncan Streets. That's roughly, I would imagine, 60-plus houses is the largest lot, and it also had a little bit of an interior side yard next to the adjacent property, which is also owned by Mr. Zimmer. So the variances that we're requesting are, one, because we're building to the side rather than up. This multifamily is allowed to go 45 feet. We could have gone, pulled this back off the rear property line, pulled it off the side, maybe not cover as much as the lot, but that wouldn't be in character with the existing neighborhood. We wanted to provide parking for a 2-unit property, which did not exist prior to that. That's another reason for the variance. So we've got a unique property and a hardship because of the 2 units, which was not created by Mr. Zimmer. This was originally constructed as a 2-unit property. And so I'd submit that the variances are very minimal. I believe we're covering 88% of the lot, slightly more than was covered before, where the rear yard setback is identical to what it was before, which is 0. And we are conforming with the height, and we're providing an additional parking spot, which would be required if it was originally provided parking, but it did not. So we are coming into more compliance with the code by doing that. And I'll just leave you with that to start, and maybe I could respond to something that his neighbors have, unless there are any questions.
I think we're good for now.
Thank you.
Ma'am?
I guess. My name's Ann Louise Novak. I live at 317 South Chester Street. I have been living there since 1963, 62, since my parents moved in that house. I have a copy of a Article 32, which states that if a house has not been an apartment for 12 months, it cannot be an apartment. It has to go back to a home. Since I've been there that long, I have not seen that house an apartment. I agree, there was a kitchen in that 2nd floor. I have played in it many times in my lifetime. I have been in that house many times in my lifetime. I then went around to the neighbors who have been living there many years, through the years. I have a copy of several articles, but that's the main one, is about a house being a residence if it hasn't been an apartment for so many years. I made it a petition around, and I went to all the neighbors asking have you ever seen 337 as an apartment or being used as an apartment? I have one person who wrote yes. And I asked her to please explain on the back of this paper why she wrote yes, and if you can, welcome to read it. And it's about Miss Byrne, who was born on that block of Chester Street. If you would like me to read it, or if you just would like to read it, I'll just pass it on. I can read it. It says, born on Chester Street, 1930. When I was a child, I remember it being an apartment. The Remskys moved in around the 1960s, and I don't remember it being an apartment since then. And she signed it again, Bernadine Cartwright. So that's roughly the 1960s. Prior to that, it was an apartment. And it was back then. Even when she lived in that neighborhood, the house she lived in was a second-floor apartment. So there were several apartments in that block back in the 40s and 50s. But since then, there aren't. So here's a copy of the petition that the neighbors signed saying none of us remember it ever being an apartment. It's a copy of that. And then here's a petition of any of us, are we in favor of it being an apartment? And all of us said no. And the reason is because parking is horrible in the city. I don't know if any of you all live in the city.
It's a requirement, everyone has to live in the city.
Oh, okay. Well, I live in the city, and I like my city living. I won't move, obviously. I still live on 317, and like I said, I'm not moving. I have been through ups and downs in the city. You know, we all have. If you've all lived in the city, you've seen it too. You've seen the neighborhoods go up, you see the neighborhoods go down, you see them go back up. It happens. I'm not moving. I like my city living. I'm going to stay, but I like keeping my city block nice. I clean up. I go up and down my neighborhood. I do clean the snow. The more renters we get, I get a comment on our renter or on our area thing. When does the city clean the sidewalks? And I love that comment when I see that on the area thing. And I always respond back, no, you must clean your own sidewalk. You know, I love hearing things like that. But let's go back to this. This is just kind of things I'm saying now. So, I can give you a copy of this letter that I kind of have written. It's just my comments, what I'm saying basically now of how I lived in this block. Like I said, I'm just not going. I have taken some photos. This is basically Miss Alvira, who lives right next door to the house, okay?
My name is Elvira Rulka. I live just next to this renovated house. And
Can you spell your name, please, ma'am?
first name? Yes, Elwira. Last name is Rulka.
Okay, and this is just pictures I took prior. And these are pictures that, like things he left sitting on top of her roof, tearing into walls where you can see where he's digging into her walls. These walls are only brick thick. This is her walls. You can see where he's dug into her walls. And these houses are only one room. And this house that he bought, when he's saying how wide this yard is, yes, this yard is wide, but it used to be a yard. The house was not that wide. He has knocked down this back part of this wall, back part of this house, which he did not have a permit for, and there is a stop permit on the front of this house because he did not have the permit yet to do the back breakdown of the house. So he did not have a permit to break down the back part of this house yet. So he's broken rules already for the city. I don't understand how they expect to pull cars up and down this little alley. These are all copies that you can keep. There's some little bit of damage that she can show you because it's
And
damaged.
I just called to my insurance, and a representative came and see all this stuff, and this is the letter he wrote to me, and he will send to my house engineer who will check about the construction if it's something if right now is something broken.
You can see how on some of these, like on the top here where this blue tarp is, that's her roof attached to her. His roof was attached to her roof. So when you take down this other house roof, you're cutting it, and it's broken, touching. It's like the roofs of touch. You all live in the city, you know how that is. So you're touching her roof as well. So there's just the first pictures I took, and these were dated on 8/10 when I took these.
This is another picture. I can take this picture from my window, and
On the third floor.
on the third floor.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And when I came here, Baltimore, it was 16 years ago, and I decided to buy this house. I can see the window, another window, and I understand this is the old buildings. I'm from Europe, and we have a lot of stuff, and I'm not asking to change that. I see what I buy and accept. But if somebody would like to do a deck on the second floor, like
What's going to be on the third floor?
must be on the third floor, my window and the people who will be on the deck, they be looking on my bedroom. And I have a window, would be this is mean I have to close all my window on the my bedroom. It's really, I don't understand if some be deck, some another place, but not on the second floor who will be look on my bedroom straight. I just draw a little bit how this be looks and be uncomfortable. And just
Here's the picture.
picture, this is the picture one I can take, and here will be the deck.
Okay. So these are just all things you can look at later. I know you're going to take all of them. So picture the deck. Like I said, these are just pictures. And these are after, apparently they must have known we were taking pictures because they must have went the next day and told the guys to clean up. So that's the date, first date, and then on 8/12, I went back to take pictures again, and they cleaned up. Boy, they definitely straightened things up and put high wood. I had to get up higher to take pictures, but it's not against the law to clean up or to take pictures. So I took some more pictures. But then I started taking also pictures. This is what they want to put for parking spots. Look how far out these cars are parked already. This is how narrow this alley is. Sure.
That's not my property.
No, it's not your property, but this is how a car has to park.
Yes, and I live, and I'm a Catholic, and this is the reason why I buy the house, because it's next to the church, and I'm the person who can park in the church. I have that privilege, but, I can't imagine leave that place if I have to park in the street. It's extremely difficult.
And I hope this is not electrical wires that his gentleman wired together. This is how his people put these wires together. I don't know who did it, but I don't think that was either electric company or the phone company did this.
This is this is first damage on my house. I just renovated too, and this is just, I think is the first damage on my wall.
I pointed that out.
He'll come back to you in a minute.
Okay, and this is just a couple other pictures. So that's the pictures I have so far. The only other thing is I have the page 4 that because I also came and got a copy. Notice you all don't have a page 4 of the layout. My page 4 shows nothing but bedrooms. It shows nothing about an apartment or nothing about a second kitchen or a second living room. So that's the page I got, page 4.
And I came home from the work and I found some paper and my
right. This is what she got in her
and
house.
my
These are the original plans. That's why they didn't show a second kitchen. That was a mistake between the engineer and Mr. Zimmer. They were confused.
Well, that's the only copy that was on file when I came to get my copy. And I was right there. He was there also.
Yeah, we've got the originally submitted plans in our file.
Okay.
The new plans were emailed, and I was told to make them the board because of the 15-day requirement, and it would be acceptable, even though
He was there.
they were hand-delivered to the adjacent property owner.
And she does have a copy. And that's why I thought it was awful funny that I was right here in the office with this gentleman. So I thought it was awful funny. He was there. I figured if anything, he would be following them that day. But this is what she got.
And I
the
would
same
like
day.
Yes, and I would like to say something. I live with my family, with my mother and my sister. She's very sick, and I'm from another culture, and I see something like on the city, people very quick make this what they call that deck, and for me it's like it's deck. I think the purpose of this deck will be they have some kind of party, something noise. And for me, it's a little surprise because live on the city, you would like to have after work to go home and and relaxing. And it's a lot of restaurants, all the stuff you can have a fun on that spot, but the house have to be for relax. And I think this can be a little problem, and especially my sister is mentally sick, and I would like to have to support them to be more quiet. And why I buy the house on the city? Because I'm the one person who driving, and the house is next to the church, what is very important for my family, and the house is close to John Hopkins. My sister is the patient of the John Hopkins, and she can be able to walk. And this is the reason I can live, and others, not on the city. Everything have to be close. I'm the one person who try to help my mother and my sister to be on that place. Thank you.
Okay. Sir?
I do not live in the city, so I'm here for moral support for Elvira and Anna Louise. I think the biggest problem that I'm seeing here is that I understand Mr. Zimmer wants to get the biggest return on his investment. I think it's somewhat disingenuous for him to imply that this has always been a two-unit building. For the past 16 years, there's been nobody there. So to come back now and say, oh, no, there's been somebody there. No, that's not true. I think he's also been playing fast and loose with the permits. It wasn't a remodeling job. It was a demolition that I think has done damage to Elvira's housing. And it's our biggest concern. In other words, he will make more money, but who will bear the cost of this multi-unit house? I think Elvira will, because he's going to buy that when they know there's 2 apartments right next door. And I think the neighborhood will as well, because it's going to be packing more people into it when it's already very crowded. So that's it. Thank you.
Pretty much it.
All right.
Can I address some of these issues?
Yes, please.
Very briefly. One, in regards to the parking, I'll show you submit some pictures of Mr. Zimmer's property next door, which is going to be identical to what's here, which is a 20-foot parking pad. It's absolutely accessible. He spoke to the fire department. I think it's the one on the end. And there are, I'm sorry, you have a look. The fire department said they have no issue getting through. So to me, that's not relevant. There is one on the end, has no relation to Mr. Zimmer. There were some issues with the stop work order that was immediately addressed and has already been completed in regards to
It's still in the window, excuse me.
It's in the window, but it's been revoked and settled up with housing. He paid a fine, and I think the rest of the demolition permit is supposed to be as part of this building permit, which ideally we'll receive here. Any damage to the property, I believe Mr. Zimmer pointed that out. It's unfortunate, but I just say that they'd have to work together. In regards to the 2 units, at the first hearing, we had the previous resident who Mr. Zimmer bought it from, who was here back from his vacation in Bethany Beach. I felt bad postponing the hearing. He wasn't able to come today, but to testify that he has been there and it has been 2 units ever since he purchased it. So in regards to that, and the city has no issue with it, and I can only go by what city records as of less than 2 weeks ago show the unit is a legal 2-unit property. And finally, in regards to the variances, we're going under the multifamily bulk regulations for R8, which this property being a row house, almost every other house is subject to the row house provisions, creates a little bit of a hardship, particularly, not a little bit, an absolute hardship in terms of the interior side yard. It requires 10 feet. This property is only 17 feet wide. If to provide that on both sides, there would be no house. I think not building up to the 45-foot limit, which we could do by right, keeps in character with the neighborhood, providing a parking pad in the back where there wasn't one before for a 2-unit property. All these things are benefits to the neighborhood. I understand there are personal issues between the 2 of them. That's always, an unfortunate situation. And I would think that Mr. Zimmer is sincere in his desire to work with them, and I hope they would be able to. But in terms of the variances we're requesting from the code, we have an absolutely unique property, the largest on the block face and in the surrounding blocks, and both by the size of the lot, the shape of the structure, and that there's a small interior side yard, and in terms of the 2 units, and the 2-unit property regulation, bulk regulations do provide a hardship, and I would submit that I would urge the board to approve our very minor variances. One final thing is that almost every house, I believe every house in this block is built to the rear yard. and in many cases to both property lines. So this is absolutely in character with what's on the existing block, and I'll just leave you with that in case there's any questions.
Can I say one more thing? Or
Sure.
Sure. Also, at the back of that house, it was very narrow. It was not the width of the yard before. The width of that house was, I guess you can see by the pictures, it was not the width of the yard ever. It was a very narrow house in the back. Like I said, I played in this house many a times. It was a narrow back. It was a bathroom way back there. There was a yard in that house. That's why we all played in that yard, because there was a yard. That was one of the few houses that had a yard. It had the yard in that, Mr. Mike's yard and Miss Irene's yard, because the house that he also bought was Miss Irene's yard. You'd run up in Miss Irene's yard, run around her garden, and run down Mr. Mike's house. So that was a big, huge yard. So that was not house property. That was yard property, is what he's trying to build the house on. So as far as the house size, it was a small house in the back. So that's why he knocked down all that back, I think, to try getting the belief of how big the house was. The house was very small in the back. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I am not a builder and I am not a measurer, but I'm just trying to say what my belief was, or what I remember. The house, per the picture, you can see, was very small in the back. So the house was not large in the back. The house was small in the back. I said it was just a little bathroom way back there. The yard was big. The yard had the, yard space. But the house was not big in the back. But all that being knocked down without permit is what has all her house exposed, has water coming in her basement now, which she's never had before. She's never had moisture in her basement before. We now have water coming in her basement. That's why her house is being inspected.
I would add, Ms. San Luis is absolutely correct about that. And that's in the back rear on the north side of the property. There was a yard. We're leaving the yard all the way to the back. It's being filled in.
You just said you're filling it all the way in.
Next to Mr. Zimmer's other property. So the only person that's affecting, you walk by in the front, it looks the same. It's being built next to a property that he already owns. It's not on their property. So
I would like to say, Mr. say, they will be doing good stuff for us, but Ana Luis say, and I know if you would like to see people who leave, and they can say they like or not. This is up to these people. He not supposed to say how beautiful stuff he do, and everybody say it's not. We not appreciate that.
One other thing, and he doesn't even live close to the city. He lives far away from the city, and he has his name still on that house. If you look it up, his name and address is on that house.
But that's not an issue which is in front of us, though.
Okay, but his name and address it still says that house. So, who can I report that to? Because his name should not be as his address.
And I usually say, if I say one more thing, when I came to Baltimore 16 years ago and I bought a house, and I just say, if I want to change living, I will ask you gentlemen where you live, and I be by next to you guys, because I don't want to have an issue like that. And I think this can help me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further?
So this property has been vacant for 16 years?
it has not been vacant for 16 years.
Mr. Mike just passed away.
Yeah, during the past 2 years, when I was working on 335, planning to move in there until I became, until I planned on getting married and having a child, which is on the way in February, I decided to change my plans. In the meantime, unfortunately, Mr. Mike passed away. We developed a great friendship and with his family during that time. Mr. Remsky was here during the initial time. He came from Bethany Beach to support me. Unfortunately, he had to work today. I have a voicemail regarding that, however. So the family came to me and said, would you like to purchase this property? About 3 months after Mr. Remsky passed away. I said, let me ask my mother and see if I can afford it. So long and behold, I bought this property as a 2-unit property. That's what Mr. Remsky.
Was it occupied as 2 dwelling units?
It was not at that time occupied as a 2 dwelling unit. Mr. Remsky was the only person that remained in there.
And how long had it not been occupied for 2 dwelling units?
I'm not aware of that. I've only been there the past 2 years.
And this is a rental registration form that shows it was registered on August 17th, but it wasn't previously registered for 2 dwelling units.
When I did my research on purchasing this property, when Mr. Remsky told me it was a 2-unit property, I viewed it as 2 kitchens. I went down to the zoning department, not once but twice, spoke to 2 different individuals, and they gave me, I believe you have a copy of it, a card, and the fellow down there said, "How many kitchens are in there?" I said, 2. And he said, 1931. He held up the card and said, "This has been registered as a 2-unit since 1931. And I said, "It's still valid?" He goes, "Yes."
In 1931, it shows 2 apartments.
Mm-hmm.
Has it been 2 apartments since 1931?
Is my understanding from
Uninterrupted?
talking with Mr. Remsky, who was here last time, that throughout and without long periods of vacancy, there were people in that second unit.
And
I think it's impossible for anyone to know for sure, but that's what it's been.
2 kitchens still remain and were active.
So-
I took it for his word.
The,
Could you speak on the microphone? They can't hear you upstairs.
I'm sorry.
And one at a time, too, because they can't hear anything.
Okay.
so the one kitchen was on the first floor and one was on the second floor?
That is correct.
But
With 2 different
where
entrance
the
doors.
bedrooms for the second unit?
There's the second unit bedroom is in the middle of the house, and then the front of the house, the original structure I would call it, has a bedroom above on every floor. And Mr. Remsky, because of his age, could not climb up the old, the old code stairway. Well, so he remained on that first floor for the remaining years of his life.
The request today is to have a kitchen on the second floor and then a new bedroom being constructed on the third floor.
Yes, the original house was 3-bedroom with a apartment in the back with a.
But there's no representation that shows how those 2 units existed prior to what you're trying to establish today.
I think we've provided all the evidence we have, and coming from
Just have a
Baltimore
few more
Housing and
exterior
from the multifamily licensing section, that it's 2 units. I don't know what else we could possibly provide. Sure, the plans today are different, but that's part of the renovation to redo the house, so they're not going to be the same.
The drawings we had previously didn't show 2 units.
That's correct, and that was a mistake.
Okay.
And-
Could I just ask a question? As additional proof, do you have any canceled checks or anything from
They
people who
didn't
were
own the
tenants there?
property back then, I wouldn't.
Okay, well, from the
understand that they
one who assured you that it was 2 units.
No,
No, so he has no proof.
I didn't ask for that, no.
Okay, and the other thing too is
I
that
went to Baltimore City and I asked if there's.
Elvira lives right next door to him, has never seen anybody
As
come
well
out there
as-
for the past 16 years. So this is not true.
Okay, folks, we've heard enough.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for your time.
Thank you.
Pictures for the record.
Oh, ma'am, are these photos so we can,
They're copies, if you want them. If you don't
want them,
I'll take them.
It's up to you. If you want a part of the record, we'll take them.
Take them for part of the record.
Okay.
I make copies all.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Figure that out later.
What do we have left? That's Mumford and, there we go. All right, calling case number 2017-306, 1000 through 1004 Eastern Avenue, Nate Prettle.
We have one more person.
Okay. Got everybody out?
Yes.
Okay, and Mr. Berry, we have this as an application to construct a new 6-story mixed-use structure that will contain 30 dwelling units and 2 first-floor retail goods establishments without alcoholic beverage sales at this location, all in a C1 neighborhood business district. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. If all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hands and be sworn, please.
You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, do we have staff reports?
Yes. First, we have a letter from the Little Italy Property Owners Association. They write that they are, on behalf of the association, or in support. Oh, okay. The date is September 23rd, 2016. And it's addressed to Councilman Kraft by Matthew Dedito, the president at that time. I am writing you this letter on behalf of the association in support of the proposed residential development at 1000 Eastern Avenue. At their September 20th, 2016 community meeting, Mr. Berry, Mr. Martin, and the architects presented their proposal for the association. And they are in support. Now, we have the letter from Giovanna Blatterman indicating that this property has not been properly posted during the legally required 21 days, that the sign was at least in part of the week of August 8th. The sign had been folded in half, unreadable, and almost totally removed. I am at this time requesting a repost. And then we have planning's report.
Thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application and noted these specific issues with regard to the application. This is a 53-foot by 100-foot corner lot. It is currently improved with a 3-story semi-detached commercial building which covers the entire lot, and the site is currently zoned C1 as of June the 5th of this year. In this area, multifamily dwellings require 300 square feet of lot area per dwelling unit. For 30 dwelling units requested, this would require 8,850 square feet of lot area. The lot only encloses 5,300 square feet, and so does not meet the requirement. The lot area variance that would be required to approve the 30 units would be 40%. The department considers this amount of lot area variance to be excessive in relation to the lot area required by the zoning codes table 10-401. With regard to the proposed height of the structure, architectural drawings submitted in support of the application indicate the maximum height would be 69 feet 10 inches, which would exceed the 60-foot maximum that is allowed by the current zoning code. Therefore, a height variance of 9 feet 10 inches would be required for approval of the application as presented. Department staff met with the architect yesterday afternoon and noted that there were places where the height of the building could be reduced, specifically the top floor and the street level floor could be reduced to at least minimize the amount of variance that would be required rather than to maximize it the way it is currently. The department is therefore recommending that the applicant consider reducing the height of the proposed structure and provide a revised architectural design. The department notes that because of the large amount of lot area variance needed for approval of 30 dwelling units, and because the applicant has the ability to reduce the number of dwelling units to 18 for new construction proposed on a standard rectangular street corner lot, this application could comply with the zoning code lot area standard without resort to variance. Planning staff did not find a compelling reason for approval of variances in the amounts sought in the application. The department notes it is incumbent upon the applicant to provide evidence of unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty caused by the code in accordance with Section 5-308 of the code to substantiate the need for the variances that would be needed for approval of the application. Thank you.
Thank you.
We also have a letter that was presented by Mr. Berry today outlining some of the history behind the progress of this project. And I assume they're going to present that
Yes.
Without me reading it into the record.
You don't need to read it into the record, but that's,
Okay.
there is a zoning map that's attached to it that, I don't know that the board members have that in front of them, but that would be useful
Should have
to look at in part.
Okay, before we get into that, since there was an issue raised regarding posting, Ms. Blatterman, if you could come. You raised an issue about the posting of the property?
I did. It was improperly posted. It was up perhaps a week, totally up, and then it was kind of falling down, folded in half, to the point where I had to kind of lift it to read it. And then last week or so was completely down. I consider that not properly posted.
When was it totally
Although,
down?
This past week, I noticed that it was totally down. I did take a picture of it when I saw that it was half covered and you couldn't see it. The top half was folded over. I mean, I don't know who's in charge of, I don't know what the board does today with qualifying postings, if you send people out to take pictures or periodically. But according to the stringent rule of law, it was not properly posted. Because I understand it's supposed to be 21 days properly posted that everyone can read. However, I'm here, but I had the privilege of getting an email from the council office alerting me to the hearing today. So, you know, I am at your pleasure here.
All right, and.
If you decide to continue to hear it, I'm here.
All right, and you witnessed the condition of the sign yourself?
In passing, yes, I did. And
Okay.
at one point, I did lift the top of it because it was pretty low. The sign was, pedestrian, that I could reach it.
And
I
you said
did
you took
lift
a
it.
photograph of it?
I did, of the half of it in half.
Do you have that photograph with you?
You know, I'm out of battery. It's in here. I apologize. If I could hook it up for a couple minutes, I could show you. I apologize.
If you have a cord, feel free.
I have the photograph as of last Thursday.
Okay, sir, we'll get to you in a moment, please.
Okay.
All right, sir,
Excuse me, the way I found out.
if you can come forward and first start off with your name and your
Name's
address.
Michael DeCicca, I'm a lifetime resident of Little Italy. I found out about this hearing yesterday. Saturday, I was on Exeter Street coming back from CVS. It's the first time that I noticed the zoning sign. I had to do something, so I didn't get a chance to read it. Yesterday, I went down there after I got off of work to find out when the meeting would be held. The sign was not there. I called zoning or housing authority. They put me through to the right people, telling me that they have had other complaints about it. I had asked if they would send somebody down to take a picture of it. They said, no, not really. I believe what you're saying. Forgive me, I do not remember the name of the person, that I had spoken to. I didn't look this morning, but they have a little placard outside where the old restaurant, I think they used to put their menu. It might be 2 feet by 18 inches, and that's where the zoning sign was that I had seen Saturday. But once again, yesterday, to find out when the meeting was, I had to call here to know to be able to come here. So
If
whether
you
my
get-
word verifies what she's saying,
If
I
you
don't
give me
know.
a second, 3
Yes, I said, ma'am, if you've got a cord with you,
Can I,
please,
can I have a minute, if I could plug it in for a minute?
go right ahead.
And I'm gonna leave the room if you don't mind.
I
Is that
think then we
okay?
might have an outlet up here.
I have
Yes.
to go get the
There's-
cord
Oh, where's the cord?
next door.
Okay, why don't you go and do
May
that?
I? Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
We got a call about the sign.
Are we recessing while she does that?
Yeah.
I mean, like, go run to the bathroom, recess for 2 minutes.
Why don't you run now?
That's what I'm saying, I could do it while she's,
Yes.
take advantage of this 2-minute recess.
Sorry.
Run the restroom while
Well,
we're
yeah,
Good
we'll
idea.
go off the record for a couple minutes. All right. Everybody who needs to use the facilities, please avail yourself of the opportunity.
Sorry.
How you been, pal? Wish you luck, but, you know.
Pues wanted to make you I was talking to
No, I ain't.
apartment,
I guess
apartment, apartment, and now it's
No,
apartment.
I said condos, make 4 condos, make them $500,000 apiece,
Yeah,
get $2 million and get out.
I wish it was that easy. Make money, I would do that, but it's not. Because
You're in debt for all those years that it's been closed, all the bills that you have.
I should have not get rid of Milan. I should have kept that so neighborhood would more appreciate it. That's not mine.
Yeah. Like I say, we did a lot to get the place closed, too, Smitty.
No, you couldn't do that. You
Yes, we
couldn't do
did.
that. The mayor couldn't do that. No one could do that.
Yes, I was. There was about 30 of us in the meeting.
It's just a private.
Okay, it doesn't make a difference, okay. Okay. Oh, yeah, it's a single-family house. Once again, we went through zoning.
It doesn't get any more efficient the more you have, so.
I didn't think so. There's nothing you can do, you know?
It does go by, it doesn't feel it, but I'll tell you, it does go by quickly.
Take plenty of pictures, so it's my 2 cents worth of advice.
Yes. Because you'll look up one day and you'll be like, holy cow, where on earth did the time go?
Supposed to be, you'll hear my testimony.
Right now, it feels like it's gonna take forever.
That's about right.
Get 'em to sleep for more than 2 hours.
Yes.
My kids were to ever show the pictures that I did take, they'd swear they didn't have a dad, because I'm not in any of them. I'm taking the
Taking
picture.
the picture.
Mr. Washington, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and nor am I, but, you know, somebody had to do it. You know?
Okay.
Take really nice picture.
Okay, we'll deal with it when you
When
get
was that picture taken?
Camera too.
My phone was ringing.
Technology.
No, but when was it taken?
Is it an Apple phone? No,
Anybody have a Samsung?
I've got an Apple
Yeah,
charger.
but what day was that? That's Thursday. Okay, well, he said it was up on Saturday.
We'll get back on the record.
The new one.
I apologize, but I did take a picture of it. It's in here. I
Just a moment.
can't show it.
Okay, and we'll go back onto the record. All right. So the testimony from the opposition is that the property was not properly posted per code, and that the sign was down for some portion of the 21-day period. So, Mr. Berry, I'll turn to you for a response.
Well, we can present testimony that shows the sign as of last Thursday. This gentleman even testified that it was up on Saturday. I don't know when it was down. First we've heard about it. You know, if Ms. Blatterman had been concerned about having the sign down, she certainly knows how to get in touch with me, and certainly we could have corrected it immediately. We did go, first I've heard that it was down for any period of time. It was up as of Thursday. We have testimony and a picture for that, and we have testimony from the resident who said he saw it on Saturday. So whether it was down between Saturday and today, I don't know.
Well, I think that her testimony is that that the period when the sign was down goes back earlier than the previous week. I think she said that when she first noticed it was down was approximately 3 weeks ago, the beginning of the month, when it was partially down and obstructed for several days. It then was re-erected, and then she observed it down again last week. That's, as I understand her testimony. Is that correct, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. So it goes back beyond just the prior week, although I think that she also did testify that it was down for a portion of last week. Am I correct in understanding that there's no testimony to refute what she said as to?
All I have is, we have evidence that it was up, and we have a testimony that it was up on Saturday. I don't know what happened in the intervening time. And I don't know what the board's practice has been recently on this. As you know, this sometimes happens. Sometimes neighbors take signs down just because they're mad at what's being proposed. I accept your protocol for this, but I'm not sure what that would be in this case.
Okay, all right. We're gonna take a few minutes to deliberate.
May I just add that if this is the case, we have a gentleman here, Michael DeChico, had said he didn't know till yesterday he had to call the board. So obviously and he spoke to neighbors, am I correct? Nobody knows, that's what nobody knew about it. So part of the situation is that perhaps a lot of people didn't know. It might be people that want to not oppose. So I think that we should have a clean situation going into this, a clean appeal here, and make sure everybody knows about it.
Okay, all right. We're gonna deliberate on this. Take a few minutes.
You want to stay on the record? Just want me to stay on or go off the record?
We can go off the record.
Did we canvass, sort of canvass, does anyone have a Samsung charger? No one has.
Okay, that's Well, I think we should take it for what it's worth.
330, 272.
Typically it's the case.
Okay, that's one of those stuff.
Accessible.
percentages of those are there cases? Is that a requirement? Just a suggestion. Maybe they have. So how many you get? 80%, 50%?
I want to measure a guess.
I will say that, that the particular section that we have now, it breaks it down by major variances, minor variances. I think that this required by is major.
Minor variances go for zoning district.
Does the board have pictures? Does the board take pictures, or
Unfortunately, we don't anymore.
you don't take any? You don't go out?
We rely on the appellant to comply.
We rely on people to report when it's not.
You used to have to go out and periodically take pictures.
We used to do it, but we don't have the budget for that anymore. Or the car. Bob Henry used to do it.
Derek would have to ride a bike.
Certainly couldn't find a place to park.
Maybe Miss Blatterman will come out of retirement.
I don't think that's legal.
Volunteer to do that for the.
We used to do it, I'm sorry, that's what we were,
I believe you.
it was a mess too, because half the time I didn't know what was going fines, but.
We couldn't find it. I think it- I think that-
There's a camera on the building, can you go into there and see, maybe you could see if it flew off or
Okay.
it was put up.
New code doesn't say continuous.
Because we didn't know that. I couldn't find the former section, but to see if there was any change. I would understand the requirement in the absence of anything that contrary, everything is an inclusion of the requirement to.
It would only make sense for it to.
That's right. Okay.
They have the old code. It was in the board's rules.
Is that where it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay. And now it's just been
That's why we
codified.
can't find it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. All right, so the testimony is that the sign had been down intermittently during the prior 21-day period. That it had been down 3 weeks ago and partially obstructed and wasn't readily viewable. Then it was down again for some portion of last week, though the applicant said that that the sign, at least from Thursday, was up, and again the testimony is that it was up as of Saturday as well. That does not, however, contradict the testimony from Ms. Blatterman that it was down for some period of time. The code does have a requirement. It's rather explicit, as pointed out by Mr. Tanner. Originally, the provision was in the board's rules. It now is codified within the code itself that the property has to be posted at least 21 days prior to the board's hearing. So at this point, the testimony being that the property was not posted during that period of time. Admittedly, that may not necessarily be the fault of the applicant. I'll note that the witness said that it obviously had been posted and it appeared that it had fallen down, but nonetheless, since it was not erected and up and viewable by members of the public for that 21-day period, the board cannot hear the case currently, which means that now the property has to be reposted, the sign has to stay up for the 21-day period, and we can, I guess, set that date on the schedule now, it would not be for our next hearing, but would be for the following one, which would be,
26.
yeah, September the 26th. Okay. Mr. Barry, any preferences to 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock?
3 o'clock, I believe.
Okay.
3 o'clock.
All right. We'll set it for the 3 o'clock docket on the 26th. And,
They need to change that on the sign to say 3 o'clock.
well, yeah, the date will have to be updated.
Yeah, we'll have to update the date. and
Update
time.
everything.
We'll
Yeah.
do that.
Um,
And we'll maybe try to find a different place to avoid it being vandalized.
Be a little higher.
And just go buy it.
What?
Go buy it.
Yeah, go buy it, yeah.
yes.
How far can you reach, Jim? We put it up this?
That's how high.
You have a camera there. You have a camera. Look at your camera.
Okay. All right. Fortunately,
well,
that's sort of where we are. So.
I understand, I can't argue with your protocol or
right.
interpretation, but we'll be back, and in the meantime, look at our submission, and hopefully we'll convince planning to change their recommendation.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can wait to see how we rule on those other sign cases. We can put an LED sign up.
Yeah. All right. Is that the last one? All right. And we're off the record. Okay. Okay.
You have a copy of the signs. I'm totally okay with them.
Yeah. The signs, I think it's kind of obvious.
I don't see how we get there with the signs.
I tried, but
Yeah,
I'm in the same place.
So that's a code, I mean, that's a city council, you gotta change it type thing.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to help him understand.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Yeah, maybe write in an exception for places of worship. All right. David, on.
Well, that could be dangerous too.
Yes, because then it's.
How do you define?
Yes.
So
Mike's
until-
house of worship.
That's right. I'm totally gonna play a bingo night on the LEDs.
Church on Sundays and chicken waffles and bingo every other night of the week.
That's right.
All right. On Chester Street, David, one thing that Frank and I were both looking at was 272, rear addition and the deck. On that, I didn't really see that there was any issue in the appeal whether it was 2 DUs or 1 or anything like that. I just saw the setback requirement and the lot coverage variance. But the provision that they were citing dealt with non-conforming uses, and isn't multi-family a permitted use in that district?
Under the R8 previous zoning, if it had existed legally, it would be fine.
Yeah.
But if it's a non-compliant use because they didn't comply with the bulk regulations. There's not enough lot area to support 2 dwelling units. If it had been 2 dwelling units legally established and continued, then it's not an issue. But however, if the unit or one of the units is abandoned for more than 12 consecutive months, then that unit is lost. And there's no clear record, other than in 1931, it was 2, and then they registered it. It should have been registered a long time ago if it was 2. they registered it August 17th for 2. So there's a big gap in time.
Yeah.
The previous drawings that we had just showed one dwelling unit. So there was no floor plan that showed how the 2 units existed. Now they've gutted the property and they're trying to rearrange it. We have no idea what it was before. That was my point.
And conversions from a single family to a multifamily under the old code and the new code in R8 require,
An ordinance, right? And generally, if there's a dispute about it, that should be separate hearing, to be honest. We were just here today for the variance that just.
Yeah. That was the thing, is that I didn't see that as
The
being
neighbors
part of the hearing.
were the ones that were raising this issue because they're concerned that it hasn't been used that way for years. And now all of a sudden, he's gonna be able to do it, you know.
Well, wouldn't that come up if, I mean, they'd have to get a use permit,
Yeah.
and so that's where, that's the junction where that would get addressed.
But if they're arguing is they don't need a use permit, it's already an existing 2-unit building, and they should be allowed to continue.
Well, if they get the zoning administrator to agree with them on that, then that may short circuit it, but.
Maybe so. But I'm not sure, I mean. Okay. And, you know, I'm not looking to cause trouble, but.
No.
I just have my doubts. And they didn't really give any evidence to show that it was a continued use for 2 dwelling units.
Well, and I guess what I'm saying is that issue really in front of us? Because I only read the data sheet to have the issues being lot coverage and the setback.
The issue. Based on their application is the current use is 2 dwelling units. And if it's not, that could be a factor in whether we should be.
I thought that it's like data sheet says that property is located in R8 zoning district in accordance with table 9401. The maximum lot coverage for a row house that has a lot depth that is less than 80 linear feet is 80%.
Yeah, that's for a single family. I mean, that's the way we initially wrote it up because that's what they asked for. Their initial application, and this was the previous contractor or developer, they said the building was vacant, proposed use single family. So it really wasn't a question until the last hearing when their drawings didn't reflect what they were saying as 2 dwelling units. So it got postponed and they came back with the new drawing showing the 2 dwelling units as proposed, not as it was, you know, what existed.
But the application still reflects 1
Well,
single family.
Did they submit a new application, Bob?
I don't know when the new drawings came in, but I'm assuming because they like to chop off the
They don't actually change.
Um,
So I'm seeing in the table for lot coverage in an R8 district for a dwelling row house, it's 60% or 80%. For dwelling multifamily, it's 80%. And then there's a footnote 4 for dwelling and row house. It says for a lot with a depth of 80 feet or more, the maximum lot coverage is 60%. For a lot with a depth of less than 80 feet, the maximum lot coverage is 80%. So it sounds like the standard that we've got stated in the data sheet there states the requirement for a single-family row house. So I'm not sure that the numbers actually change, that there's a difference between one or the other.
It probably doesn't change. The actual lot coverage. It's probably gonna be 80%.
Yeah. And the minimum rear yard. For R8, this is 20 or 25 feet. So who has that is on 16 there.
Multiple dwelling.
Yeah.
Actually,
And so they've got the proposed addition will cause row house to project 15 linear feet beyond the required setback. So I guess they've got a 0 setback is what they're seeking, right? So regardless of whichever one they use, you basically wind up in the same place. All right.
yes. I guess my concern is with the zoning administrator's office, I'm afraid to say. They should do a more thorough job when these issues come up. You can't just say, well, 1931 it was 2, so you should be fine. And that's what I'm hearing they were told.
Yes.
So I guess my concern should be focused somewhere else.
Well, again, I mean, I think it's I guess the good part of it is that either they're going to come in with a use permit to use it as 2 dwelling units, or they can have I guess the neighbors can have a negative appeal saying that one should be required and that they didn't come in and get one. It can be addressed, I guess, at that time.
They have to go look on the window every day. How will the neighbors know when the permit is issued to file the negative?
You can check online.
I think we would have to keep them informed.
Okay.
When we have I think we're required to do that if a permit comes in within a year.
Oh, yeah, I think that's right.
Get one of those little auctioneer things, stand on a stoop.
All right, any other ones?
You want the carry-out ones? Are we okay with the restaurant portions?
The one on Patterson Park, yes. The one on Bentlow Street, it seemed like he was pretty adamant about carry-out. And not being a deli, not being a sit-down restaurant, purely a carry-out.
No altogether, or just no to the carry-out?
I mean, he can do as I understand it, he can do the deli. I mean, it's on the.
And honors the MOU, that's all he can do.
Yeah, yeah.
And he would have to come back if he ever wanted to carry out.
Mhm.
And if the code's the same as it is today, he wouldn't be able to get it.
Yeah.
Bayless. 317.
I was okay on Bayless.
Yes, as was I.
Vaguely.
Yeah.
It already built that.
It was
Oh,
existing
yeah.
before the permit.
Yeah, it's not a situation that I like, but, you know, when you look at the table, it says, you know, permitted intrusions into a rear yard, you know, a deck. So, you know, yes, they're supposed to go through a process or a procedure for it, but it's, fact still remains that it's a permitted intrusion. And as David brought up, that he goes and gets his permit, he's likely gonna get a fine for it.
If this issue wasn't there, it would have been on the consent docket.
Yes, yes, and I figured that it would, because I mean, that's one of those things where you look at it, you're like, yeah, this is a consent docket case, because it's a permitted intrusion, it's just a deck, all right. And irrespective of the fact that, well, set aside the fact that it was done without a permit, I mean, that's what would have happened. We wind up at the same place, and the question of, was there a permit issued first or not is an enforcement one, and so he's gonna have to pay a fine when he goes to get the permit, which he's now seeking.
I would just say, being a former builder, we complied with city regulations because we didn't want to jeopardize our reputation in the community. So if the builder was here, I would say the same, as you would just want to be cognizant of that. Because eventually, I know, I would say eventually the community will be less supportive if those kinds of instances continue to occur.
Oh, yeah, and folks pay their money to, whether they be professionals, technically skilled people, what have you, for a result. Because they know how to get it done, and they assume that it's gonna get done correctly and properly. So if people run into problems like this, you're like, well, why would I use that person? It's they're either cutting corners or what have you, and then in the end, I'm having to pay to go through this whole process.
I can quote Dr. King and say, the time's always right to do the right thing.
Never heard Martin Luther King being very excited with
In the
regard to
zoning.
zoning case, but, all right.
Okay, now we get to my issue. It's a procedural thing, and I talked to David, and I usually wind up dumping it on the board. People come in, file for something, they can't amend it for 15 days prior to the hearing. They come in with massive amendments on the day of the hearing. Meanwhile, staff hasn't had a chance to look at it or deal with it. It's a similar problem with this 2-unit thing. We've got another one coming up. I will not name addresses or applicants at this point, where they're, you know, changing from single family to multiple family under an amendment, and you're gonna find out the day before the hearing, because they haven't given us anything. It's only gossip. They don't wanna play their card till the day of the hearing.
So the rule is you can amend for 15 days after you've initially filed?
Within 15 days of the hearing date. You're allowed to amend the day of the hearing.
There's no way to get
The
the
scope of the
proper
amendment.
notice out to everybody.
Right.
And we often get agreements where the parties say, okay, if you scale back or you do this or X, Y, Z, we'll support you. And we don't want to prevent that from going forward. So we would allow it to be amended the day of the hearing, but that doesn't mean if they come in and try to amend something that the board feels needs to go through the proper public review, that the board could say, well, we're gonna postpone it, and you know.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. To me, that's the remedy. The board,
Yeah.
if we get hit with something the day of a hearing, say, we're not hearing it today.
Right.
Using that as an illustration for the two-unit building.
The board certainly has that right, especially in something like that, which is a total, separate issue from what they originally asked for.
I mean, I don't like dumping it over the board, I prefer to have something resolved.
Well,
No, I
hopefully,
appreciate that.
hopefully, we try to resolve those
Right.
types of issues before they get to the board, but occasionally we end up with them. But
Just let us know, and,
That's right.
we'll vote to postpone if appropriate.
I think we could say we don't enjoy being dumped on.
How would they expect us to have the answers? I tell them I don't vote, but they don't believe it.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a
Anything
good point.
Okay. 2017-234, 1508 North Eden Street, was by consent. 2017-261, 6 North Montford Avenue. I guess that was almost by consent, too.
I called it moot.
I would
Yes.
prefer to revoke the permit.
Right.
Yes, yes. Well, I think that's what they agreed.
Yeah.
Do we have to take any kind of affirmative?
We would
to
uphold
do
the
that?
negative
An
appeal.
appeal, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, just to clean up the record, I guess I'm a yes as to the negative appeal.
Yes.
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 2017-272, 337 South Chester, I'm a yes.
Yes. Agreed.
Yes.
2017-275, 3832 West Forest Park Avenue was postponed. 2017-277, 2030 West Cold Spring Lane was postponed. 2017-292, 1801 through 1825 East Oliver Street was by consent with planning department conditions. 2017-293, 3307 Shuck Street was by consent. 2017-294, 2028 through 2030 Fountain Street was by consent with planning department conditions. 2017-295, 608 South Fagley Street, I'm a yes.
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 Agreed.
2017-297, 447 South Bentlow Street, I'm a no as to the carryout, but a yes as to the deli.
Yes.
I agree.
Agreed.
That incorporates also the MOU with the Community Association.
Great.
2017-298, 5715 Hillen Road was postponed. 2017-300, 536 Wesley Street was postponed. 2017-301, 4700 through 4710 Prudence Street, I'm a no.
Agreed.
No.
Yeah, no.
2017-303, 101 North Patterson Park Avenue. I'm a yes to the restaurant use and the carryout and catering uses as accessory to the restaurant.
Yes.
Yes.
Agreed.
2017-305, 1061 South Charles Street was by consent and planning department conditions and incorporates a MOU with the Community Association. 2017-306, 1000 through 1004 Eastern Avenue was not posted, and I guess is to be rescheduled for the 26th of September. 2017-307, 609 South Port Street was by consent. 2017-308, 3250 East Fayette Street was by consent. 2017-309, 1255 Battery Avenue was by consent. 2017-312, 5401 through 5407 Lock Raven Boulevard, I'm a no.
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 2017-314, 3112 Fleet Street was by consent. 2017-316, 2040 Rock Rose Avenue was by consent and planning department conditions. And 2017-317, 701 Bayless Street, I'm a yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
civic-filled day.
Already started working.
Yes, wow, you get the gold star.
Yes.